Chapter 809. When Chu Kuangren was still a human king, he had once slain an underworld deity. He had even absorbed and refined the other party's godhead. However, the underworld deity did not know about this. To him, the human king and Chu Kuangren were two completely different people. Even if you beat him to death, he would never associate the two of them together. When the underworld god heard that Chu Kuangren had killed her before, she could not help but be stunned for a moment before she sneered. Chu Kuangren, the ones you've killed before were merely clones of divine power. How can they compare to my true self? This time, I'll show you the power of a chief god. The god of the underworld roared, and his divine power surged out in a frenzy, transforming into a pitch-black gate in the void that was carved with all kinds of Azura demons. Nether God Divine Ability, Gate of Hell. As the door opened, countless Azura evil spirits rushed out from within. It's this stupid door again. Chu Kuangren curled his lips, but the descendant self-sword at his waist did not move. Instead, the Emperor's chi circulated behind him, and the majestic 10,000 Taoist avatar formed. Presently, he was already a Tao Lord, and his Tao had risen to the extremes of the Tao Lord realm. So, when he executed this technique now, its might couldn't be compared to the past at all, and it was like the difference between an infant and an adult. How could this be? The Nether God was stunned. The power of the 10,000 images was just too terrifying. Even he, an over-god, felt his scalp tingle. How long has it been? How did this guy improve to such an extent? When Xiao Chen's incarnations met earlier, Xiao Chen had only just advanced to Martial Emperor. Now, he had directly surpassed the Celestial Sovereign level and become a Tao Lord. Others are progress. However, why did he feel that Chu Kuangren was evolving? There's also this Tao aura. Why is it so familiar? The Nether God swallowed. He sensed a very familiar aura from Chu Kuangren's Taoist body. It was a nightmare that was engraved in the depths of his memory and could not be erased. Human King. This person's Tao was exactly the same as that of a human king. That's impossible. How could there be two completely identical Taos in this world? What's your relationship with the human king? The underworld god was a little frightened. It was not clear whether it was because of Chu Kuangren's strength or because his Taoist Tao had triggered the fear in the depths of her heart. If I said that I am a sovereign personage, would you believe me? Chu Kuangren chuckled. Before he went to the ancient era, his Tao of invincibility was only at the perfect level. However, in the long river of time, he had witnessed the development of the human race and understood the true meaning of self-improvement and invincibility. His Tao had also been elevated. The path of self-improvement and invincibility. This was Chu Kuangren's Tao, and it was also the human king's Tao. Impossible, impossible, that person died a long time ago. The underworld god shook his head frantically. He roared as he channeled his soul energy, turning it into thousands of Ashura evil spirits that charged towards Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren let out a soft roar and the 10,000 Taoist avatar unleashed a punch. The fist energy was filled with vibrant colors and contained the power of various Taoist physiques. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of Azura evil ghosts were destroyed by the fist wind, and the majestic fist energy directly slammed into the door of hell. With just a single punch, the door of hell collapsed and transformed into countless fragments, and it even blasted the god of the underworld flying. Puff! The Nether God vomited blood, her face filled with horror. Die! Language of the Nether God. The Nether God went crazy and activated her divine power to the maximum. The Nether God unleashed his second divine ability, and strange syllables suddenly rang in the void, attacking Chu Kuangren's soul energy. However, this divine ability was still useless. To the Nether God, Chu Kuangren was like his nemesis. They had fought against each other a few times, but each time, the Nether God was completely suppressed by Chu Kuangren. He could not resist at all. There was no one else who could do something like this for a Lord God. Emperor Burial Coffin, come to me! The Emperor Burial Coffin roared. The Emperor Burial Coffin that was sent flying immediately flew back. When the coffin opened, a terrifying suction force enveloped Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren did not resist and was immediately sucked in. Ha! This emperor burial coffin of mine can refine anything. Even a deity stronger than me will definitely die if they enter it. Kid, you can die together with the Chaos Taoist master in there. The Nether God could not help but laugh. He then continued to channel his divine power into the emperor burial coffin, pushing the refining power to the maximum. Inside the emperor burial coffin. It was Chu Kuangren's second time here. Ignoring the surging refining power around him, he took a step forward and stood before the Chaos Taoist master. The Chaos Taoist master's soul was already extremely weak, and his physical body was also gradually disintegrating due to the refinement of the Nether God's divine power. After holding on for so long, I might die here. The Chaos Taoist master sighed. If he did not give up on his cultivation, he might have been able to hold on for a few more years. However, he did not regret it. Although he was going to die, he had used his cultivation to create an unprecedented peerless genius for the human race. He believed that in time, that person would become a pillar of support for the human race. I wonder how much that person has grown. The Chaos Taoist master murmured. Bastard. As his consciousness blurred, the Chaos Taoist master heard a voice. Was it an auditory hallucination? Yes, it must be an auditory hallucination. Other than the king, who else would dare to call him a bastard? The Chaos Taoist master thought back to the time when he had yet to embark on the path of cultivation. He was just a small fry on the streets. Then, there was one time when he had his eyes on a luxuriously dressed young man on the streets. He wanted to steal that person's wallet to treat his brother's illness. However, he did not expect that one theft would change his entire life. He was caught by that person, but that person did not punish him. Instead, that person helped him to treat his brother and taught them cultivation techniques. The Chaos Taoist master could still remember what that person said to him. You're a man with an indomitable spirit. Little bastard, you're very talented. In time, you'll definitely become a pillar of the human race. Don't keep doing these shady things on the streets. It's embarrassing. That person was half reprimanding and half encouraging. It was the first time in his life that the Chaos Taoist master felt recognized. From then on, the Chaos Taoist master embarked on a path that he had never imagined. That was how he became the famous Chaos Taoist master. It was only later that he found out that the young man was the king of the human race. Bastard, wake up. The Chaos Taoist master felt the voice in his ears getting clearer. An invisible force was channeled into his body, restoring his consciousness. Damn, other than the king, who else would dare to call me a bastard? The Chaos Taoist master slowly regained consciousness and glared at the person in front of him. It's you? Why are you here again, kid? The Chaos Taoist master could not help but look at Chu Kuangren in surprise. He had even temporarily forgotten that Chu Kuangren had called him a bastard. Kid? Chu Kuangren frowned when he heard the way the Chaos Taoist master addressed him. Before he became the king, he did not mind calling him that. But now, it sounded so awkward. Not a single human in the firmament star dared to call him that. Forget it. Chu Kuangren shook his head and did not mind. I'm here to save you. Save me? Chu Kuangren activated his mind power and the blood-colored light pillar that was sealing his limbs instantly shattered. Then, he raised his hand to gather the Emperor's Qi. Ultimate technique, Heaven-Earth Reversal. With a punch, the ultimate technique of ultimate technique was unleashed. Coupled with the ultimate Emperor's Qi and the ultimate Taoist, the three ultimate techniques converged to form a monstrous force that was never seen before. The fist energy surged like starlight and landed on the burying Emperor's coffin. The Taoist patterns within the burying Emperor's coffin instantly shattered, and countless cracks appeared on the surface of the coffin. With a loud explosion, the coffin was completely shattered. Chapter 8:10. In the black soil of the Emperor's Road, the underworld deity was channeling his divine power to use the burial Emperor's coffin's refining power to refine Chu Kuangren and the Chaos Taoist master. However, just as he thought that victory was within his grasp, a seemingly apocalyptic energy suddenly erupted from the burial Emperor coffin. Then, Countless cracks appeared on the coffin. How is this possible? The Nether God's expression changed drastically. With a loud bang, the burying emperor coffin shattered into countless pieces. Boundless energy gushed out and blasted the god of the underworld away. Two streams of light shot out from the shattered emperor burying coffin. It was Chu Kuangren, the Chaos Taoist master. The Chaos Taoist master was dumbfounded as if he was still immersed in some kind of shock. He stared at Chu Kuangren in disbelief. What did he just see? The ultimate Tao. And it was the ultimate path of a king. Also, did Chu Kuangren just call him a hooligan? Since ancient times, only the king had dared to call him that. What was going on? Chu Kuangren was the king. The Chaos Tao master was dumbfounded. However, the god of the underworld's condition was similar to his. As one of the strongest existences among the gods, the god of the underworld's life divine weapon, the burying emperor coffin, was extremely strong and indestructible. Even the leader of the gods would not be able to destroy it easily. However, Chu Kuangren had destroyed it all. How did he grow to such a level in just a few years? Let's go! Without any hesitation, the Nether God turned around and fled. His divine abilities were useless, and his divine weapon was destroyed as well. In front of Chu Kuangren, there was nothing he could do. If he stayed any longer, only death awaited him. Where can you run to? Chu Kuangren chuckled. His mini-world transformed into chains and shot out at an incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, the chains had bound the underworld god. With a thought, thousands of spiritual chi condensed into a weapon and locked onto him. With a single thought, 10,000 blades create a calamity of soldiers. The Chaos Taoist master could not help but murmur when he saw Chu Kuangren's thoughts. The confusion in his eyes deepened. Wasn't this the mystery of being a king? Boom, boom, boom. The spirit weapons were like rain, instantly blasting the Chaos Tao master into pieces. A godhead floated in the air. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and grabbed it. With this godhead, my soul power will be able to increase by another level. I might even be able to condense a human soul again. Chu Kuangren smiled in satisfaction. The Lord of the Underworld was really pitiful. Not only was his ability countered by Chu Kuangren, but his godhead was also refined by Chu Kuangren twice in a row. It was simply an EXP baby. Chu Kuangren shook his head and looked at the Chaos Taoist master who was still in a daze. All right, you've regained your senses. Or you? Chaos Tao master asked doubtfully. Puma, that's a good question. I'm Chu Kuangren, but I'm also the human Emperor Azure. Let's see who you're more willing to take me for, you bastard. Chu Kuangren chuckled. You really are the reincarnation of the king. Chaos Tao master said excitedly. This was the most logical explanation he could come up with. How could a peerless figure like the king die so easily? He must have used some kind of secret method to reincarnate. He was Chu Kuangren. Otherwise, why would he feel a sense of familiarity when he first saw Chu Kuangren? He was even willing to give up his cultivation to help Chu Kuangren forge the ultimate emperor essence. That must be his instincts for a king. The more the Chaos Tao master thought about it, the more excited he became. Chaos Tao master looked at Chu Kuangren with a fervent gaze. He immediately knelt on the ground. Welcome back, my king. I didn't think I'd be able to meet you again in my lifetime. Reincarnation? Chu Kuangren rubbed his chin. That was a good excuse. He did not have to explain too much either. All right, it's settled then. Chu Kuangren followed the Chaos Tao master's wishes and silently admitted that he was the reincarnation of the Azure. He said, "Get up. The human tribe still has many things waiting for us to do, and they still need you." My king, I'm afraid I won't be able to help you now that my cultivation has been crippled. The Chaos Tao master smiled bitterly. Your cultivation may be gone, but your Taoist physique is still there. As long as your heart is not crippled, it's only a matter of time before you regain your cultivation, Chu Kuangren said with his hands behind his back. My king is right. The Chaos Tao master's eyes were filled with determination. He looked at Chu Kuangren with admiration and admiration. He was even more certain that Chu Kuangren was the king. Only the king could guide him. He was like a ray of light in the darkness, so bright and gentle that people could not help but want to follow him. Let's go! Chu Kuangren grabbed the Chaos Dao Master and enveloped him in Emperor's Qi. Then, he cast the spatial conveyor technique and instantly returned to the Black Heaven sect. He asked Elder Rian to arrange a place for the Chaos Dao Master to stay. Then he sent a message to Luo Shui. When she learned that the Chaos Dao Master had been rescued, Luo Shui could not contain her joy and wanted to rush to the Black Heaven sect immediately. However, as the great general of the fort, she could not leave her post easily. Fortunately, the Blood Tribe had not made any moves recently, so she could make a trip to the Firmament Star after making some arrangements. Besides, she also wanted to know what was going on with Chu Kuangren. Not only her, but the Dharma Taoist Master and the Scarlet Sun Taoist could not contain their curiosity either. The few of them agreed to come to the Firmament Star as well. In the Black Heaven sect, Elder Rian looked at the 2 men and 1 woman in front of her and felt cold sweat dripping down her forehead. She knew that aside from Chu Kuangren, the Black Heaven sect could not afford to offend any one of these 3 people. However, when she thought of Chu Kuangren, she regained her confidence. The 3 of you, the sect leader, is currently in closed-door meditation. He mentioned that the Black Heaven sect will have an esteemed guest named Luo Shui to visit. May I know who it is? Elder Rian stepped forward and asked. As for Chu Kuangren, he was currently in closed-door meditation to refine the underworld god's godhead. I am Luo Shui. Since Brother Chu is in closed-door meditation, we shall not disturb you. May I know where my honorable master, Chaotic Chaos, is now? Luo Shui said. Everyone, please follow me. Elder Rian brought the few of them to meet Chaotic Chaos. Honorable Master. Luo Shui was very excited when he saw Chaotic Chaos. Brother Chaotic, how have you been? A long time no see. The Dharma Taoist Master and the Scarlet Sun Taoist were delighted too. Honorable Master, your cultivation level. Luo Shui noticed the abnormality in the Chaos Dao Master and could not help but worry. Hi, it's fine. Chaotic Chaos shook his head and smiled. He briefly explained what happened to him and then looked at Luo Shui and the others. Thank you for your hard work all these years. He had heard about the Blood Tribe from Chu Kuangren. Unfortunately, he was sealed in the burying emperor's coffin at that time and could not do his part. He was very regretful about that. By the way, Honorable Master, do you know about Brother Chu? Luo Shui asked curiously. Luo Shui, Myriads, Scarlet Sun, I'm afraid we can no longer treat Brother Chu as a junior anymore. This the king. The Chaos Dao Master said solemnly. What? How is that possible? The Myriads Dao Master and the Scarlet Sun Taoist gasped. The Chaos Dao Master is right. The king is the king. We didn't know it before, but we can still treat him as a junior. However, from now on, we must still treat him with respect. At that moment, Qin Yi and the other heavenly executioners walked over. Qin Yi knew that Chu Kuangren did not care about such formalities, but Qin Yi could not help it. In his opinion, the king was too lenient, and that would easily give rise to rebellious thoughts. For example, the Black-Yellow Taoist. Chapter 8:11. After receiving confirmation from the heavenly executioners, the Dharma Taoist Master, the Scarlet Sun Taoist Master, and Luo Shui finally accepted the truth. After the initial shock, they could not help but rejoice. This is great. Our king is back. Now that the human race has him, let's see who dares to be so presumptuous, especially that heavenly yellow Taoist Master. I'd like to see if he can still be so arrogant in front of our king. The Dharma Taoist Master snorted coldly. At that moment, it was as if they had found their backbone. Knowing that Chu Kuangren was the king, they were no longer in a hurry to return to the outer domain. Instead, they stayed in the Black Heaven sect, hoping to meet Chu Kuangren when he came out of his closed-door meditation. Of course, they did not just sit around and do nothing. In the Black Heaven sect, they took on the role of elders, preaching to the disciples and guiding them in their cultivation. They did not look like the high and mighty Taoist masters at all. To them, this was the king's sect. They could do whatever they wanted, but they would not dare to do so here. Lan Yu, Murong Xian, and the others seized this rare opportunity to absorb the Taoist master's cultivation experiences with all their might. At the same time, they also asked about Chu Kuangren out of curiosity. They knew that the king that the Dharma Taoist master and the others mentioned was their sect leader, but they did not know the reason behind it. Senior Dharma, what did the human king do in the past? On this day, as soon as the Dharma Taoist master finished his lecture, a disciple asked curiously, "All right then, I'll tell you about some of the glorious deeds of our king. I'll let you all know how amazing your sect leader is." The Dharma Taoist master cleared his throat and said, as he recounted his glorious deeds, the disciples felt like they had returned to ancient times, witnessing how the human king was like a ray of light in the dark ages of the human race, illuminating the path for the human race. Inventing alchemy, chi refinement, defeating the Star Slayer tribe, battling the lords, becoming a king, setting foot on the godly mountain, battling the godly lords, building a kingdom. Everyone was overwhelmed with emotions when they heard this, and all of them were extremely excited. I didn't know the sect leader was so amazing in his past life. No wonder the sect leader is so outstanding. Yeah, the way I see it, our sect leader is no weaker than the human king back then. The Black Heaven sect is what it is today because of the sect leader. Yes, no matter if it's the human king or the sect leader, they are both people that we admire the most. But now that I heard that they are actually the same person, I feel that I admire the sect leader even more. The disciples of the Black Heaven sect were in a heated discussion. Their admiration for Chu Kuangren had reached an unimaginable level. Seeing this, the Tao Master of Myriad Laws could not help but shake his head and sigh. As expected of the king, no matter where he is, he will always be the center of attention. 10,000 arts, come here. At this moment, Luo Shui suddenly sent a message. The Tao Master of Myriad Arts stood up and went to the residence of the Tao Master of Chaos. The few of them were now gathered together, and there was one more Tao Master. The strongest Tao Lord of the Firmament Star's demonic tribe, Hao Yu. Tao Lord Bright Moon, why are you here? I heard from Luo Shui that Human King has returned. Hao Yu said lightly. 10,000 Arts sect slightly nodded. Upon hearing this, Hao Yu revealed a look of reminiscence in her eyes. Even though she was of the fiend race, she deeply respected a sovereign personage. Originally, she had no intention of interfering with the internal affairs of the human race. However, now that she knew that the human king had returned, she changed her mind. The heavenly yellow Tao Lord and his cronies will sign a treaty with the deities at the godly mountain. When that time comes, the deities will be granted the right to spread their faith among the humans. In exchange, the deities will provide assistance to the heavenly yellow Tao Lord in conquering the outer universe civilization, Bright Moon Tao Lord said. Upon hearing this news, the Tao Master of Myriad Laws' expression sank. The heavenly yellow Tao Lord is really daring. What right does he have to represent the entire human race? As long as the human king doesn't appear, the heavenly yellow Tao Lord is currently the strongest person in the human race. In addition to the dozens of Tao Lords standing by his side, he can be said to be the sole ruler of the human race now, Bright Moon Tao Lord said. What's the attitude of the fiend race? The fiend race initially did not want to interfere with the internal affairs of the human race, but with the deities and the heavenly yellow Tao Lord joining forces, it's hard to guarantee that they won't attack the fiend race next. Therefore, I choose to help you now, Hao Yu said. A wise move. The Tao Master of Myriad Laws nodded slightly. Previously, he was very dissatisfied with Bright Moon Tao Lord's ambiguous attitude. Now that he was willing to help them, the grudge in his heart was instantly reduced. Come, let's go to the godly mountain. Where's the human king? The king will be the last one to appear. The Tao Master of Myriad Laws said. Bright Moon Tao Lord was speechless. This isn't an opera. Ahem, the king is now in closed-door cultivation to refine the underworld god's godhead. It'll probably take a few days. The Tao Master of Myriad Laws coughed twice and said, There's no need for that. Let's go together. An indifferent voice was heard. Chu Kuangren walked out from the void. Godly Mountain. The place where the deities resided. Today, both the humans and deities had gathered here. Among them, the human race was led by the heavenly yellow Tao Lord, while the deities were led by the Lord of Gods. It was worth mentioning that outside of these two forces, there was also a large number of myriad deity sects disciples, and their leader was the Slayer Star, the former human god's son. These people could be said to be the most powerful beings in Firmament Star, and this meeting would also determine the future of the entire Firmament Star. I will be the witness for the humans and the deities to sign the Human God Treaty. The treaty will last for the next 100,000 years. The Slayer Star stepped forward and said. After he finished speaking, the heavenly yellow Tao Lord and the Lord of Gods simultaneously channeled their emperor's chi and divine power into the void. Suddenly, countless golden runes appeared in the void. That was the Human God Treaty. Once this treaty is signed, anyone who disobeys will be punished by both the humans and the deities. The Slayer Star said. He would be the keeper and executor of this treaty. And this was a great power. It meant that in the situation where the humans and the deities were in balance, he, the human god's son, would become a sharp sword hanging over the heads of the humans and the deities. And he had the strength to do so. The deities would gain the right to spread their faith among the humans, and the heavenly yellow Tao Lord would gain the deities' help to increase their combat power in conquering the outer space civilization. The Slayer Star would gain the respect of both the humans and the deities. It was a treaty that would benefit all three parties. All right, sign your name, Lord of Gods. The heavenly yellow Tao Lord said with a hint of excitement in his eyes. Once this treaty was signed, he would usher in a new era for the humans. It would be an era where humans and deities coexisted, an era that was far more glorious than when the human king was still alive. He would become a greater king than the heavens. The corners of the Lord of God's lips curled up slightly. He raised his hand and sent out a stream of divine power. The divine power landed on the treaty and turned into a single word. Huang. That was the Lord of God's name. All right, it's your turn. The Lord of Gods looked at the heavenly yellow Tao Lord and said calmly. The heavenly yellow Tao Lord gathered Emperor's chi at his fingertips and was about to sign his name. However, at that moment, a palm chi blasted toward the treaty. The heavenly yellow Tao Lord frowned slightly. The Emperor's chi at his fingertips struck the palm chi. He then looked into the distance and saw a dozen streams of light flying over. They were the myriad arts Tao Lord, Luo Shui, the Scarlet Sun Tao Lord, the Bright Moon Tao Lord, and a group of heavenly executioners. Even at this time, you still want to mess things up. You really don't know what's good for you. The heavenly yellow Tao Lord said with a gloomy expression. He did not understand why these people kept disobeying him. He could have ushered in a new era. Since you've disobeyed me again and again, don't blame me for being merciless. The heavenly yellow Tao Lord's eyes were filled with killing intent. Beside him, the Lord of Gods said playfully, a few Tao Lords and a few injured and crippled heavenly executioners dare to trespass on my divine mountain. Are the humans so bold now? What if I'm included? Chapter 8:12. What if I join in as well? A cold voice echoed throughout the entire divine mountain. In the air, a handsome figure dressed in white with a long sword hanging from his waist slowly stepped through the air. His aura swept out like a tidal wave, crashing into the entire divine mountain. His aura made the deity's pupils dilate, especially the divine master. He narrowed his eyes with a cold glint in them. This familiar feeling. So you're not dead yet? The ones who knew you best were your enemies. That was true. Before the heavenly yellow path master, Xianxia, and the others realized Chu Kuangren's identity, the divine master had already figured it out. Although Chu Kuangren had changed his face, the aura that emanated from Chu Kuangren's body was still etched in the divine master's mind. Heh, since all of you deities have yet to perish, how can I leave before you do? Chu Kuangren chuckled. The heavenly yellow path master and Xianxia looked at each other. They did not know how Chu Kuangren knew the divine master. However, the heavenly yellow path master had seen Chu Kuangren use this technique before, so he had a vague guess. Who the hell are you? The heavenly yellow path master looked at Chu Kuangren in shock. Chu Kuangren also looked at the heavenly yellow path master with an icy gaze and said, I heard that you're representing the human race to sign a treaty with the deities. Let me ask you, do you have the right to do so? Why don't I have the right? I'm now the strongest person in the human race. More than half of the human Taoists listen to my orders, and the billions of soldiers in the outer realm will fight for me at my command. I'm asking you, do I have the right? The heavenly yellow path master roared as if he wanted to prove something. The emperor's qi on his body surged as Taoist patterns intertwined and converged to form a huge heavenly golden imperial avatar that emanated a terrifying aura. Chu Kuangren did not answer immediately but chuckled. What are you laughing at? The heavenly yellow path master's expression was extremely gloomy. I'm laughing at you for not knowing what you're doing. B*****. After the heavenly yellow path master guessed Chu Kuangren's identity, the smile on his face deeply pierced his pride. Unable to contain his anger, he activated the divine honorable avatar behind him and unleashed a punch at Chu Kuangren. A violent surge of the power of heaven and earth instantly gushed out. That power was enough to shatter stars. The expressions of the Tao Master of Myriad Laws and the others changed slightly. The Divine Master squinted his eyes and said with interest, Interesting. Apart from Xianxia, there is also such an expert in the human clan. With a single thought, all techniques returned to dust. Chu Kuangren gently lifted his hand and unleashed his mind power. A vortex formed in the void. The power of heaven and earth was completely absorbed by the whirlpool, so it could not hurt Chu Kuangren at all. That move of his had shocked everyone present. It was not only Chu Kuangren's strength. What was more important was the significance of that move. This was especially true for the deities. Their pupils were trembling slightly as they stared at Chu Kuangren. They could not help but feel a sense of fear. Human king. No, isn't he dead? But that psychokinesis cultivation method is definitely that of a human king. His Tao is also the same as that of a human king. Who else could it be if not him? To the gods, the human race was not scary. What was scary was a person. That person was a nightmare that they could not get rid of. They originally thought that the shapeshifter had disappeared, but now, the shapeshifter had made a comeback in an even more powerful manner. When I left, you were only a heavenly honorable. Now, you've ascended to the peak of the minor Taoist master level. How gratifying! Chu Kuangren said calmly with the tone of an elder. The tranquil cloud Taoist masters behind the heavenly yellow Taoist could not help but tremble. Their faces were filled with excitement and bewilderment. Has that person really returned? Come, take a move from me too. Chu Kuangren gently tapped the heavenly yellow Taoist master with the tip of his finger. His majestic mind power gathered the flames that filled the sky and turned into a golden red fire lotus. The fire lotus was beautiful and dazzling. However, it contained enough power to destroy the world. It was the human king's ultimate technique, one thought, myriad deity calamity fire lotus. The heavenly yellow Taoist master channeled his emperor's qi to its limit, and the heavenly honorable avatar behind him threw a punch at the fire lotus. The Taoist patterns intertwined with the power of heaven and earth spread towards the fire lotus. When the two terrifying forces collided, the entire godly mountain trembled. If not for the godly mountain's unique structure, the power of that attack was enough to destroy everything within 1,000,000 kilometers. The fire lotus overpowered the heavenly yellow Taoist avatar and destroyed the heavenly yellow Taoist avatar. The heavenly yellow Taoist avatar was also affected by the powerful impact. His face turned pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying. The overgods were horrified. The heavenly yellow Taoist master was so powerful that he could be said to be more powerful than any overgod other than the heavenly masters and the space overgods. However, such a powerful being was sent flying by Chu Kuangren with a single move. At that moment, they were even more certain that Chu Kuangren was a human king. Other than a human king, who else in the human tribe would have such strength? Tranquil cloud, blood wave, startling wind. Chu Kuangren's gaze swept across the Taoists behind the heavenly yellow Taoist master and read out their names one by one. Those who made eye contact with him could not help but avert their eyes. It was as if they were ashamed and afraid. "I can give you a chance. Make your choice," Chu Kuangren said. The Taoists looked at each other before they walked up to Chu Kuangren and knelt down on one knee, looking ashamed. "Are ashamed to face our king." Chu Kuangren then looked at the heavenly yellow Taoist master who was not far away. Blood was dripping from the corner of his mouth, and his hair was disheveled. He looked at the scene in front of him with dissatisfaction. "You said that you're the strongest human? Yet you can't even take a single move from me. You said that almost half of the human Taoists listen to your orders. Now, ask them again if they're willing to follow you. You said that with a single command from you, the billions of soldiers from the outer realm will charge into battle for you? Then why don't you try and see if they're willing to listen to you, or if they'll trust me, the #1 soldier on the combat leaderboard?" Chu Kuangren's words were as cold as knives. Every word he uttered felt like a knife was stabbing into the heavenly yellow Taoist master's heart. After those words, the heavenly yellow Taoist master's face was beyond pale. His Taoist core was on the verge of collapsing. His many years of planning now seemed like a joke. It had completely failed the moment Chu Kuangren returned. That was because he was facing the greatest king of the human tribe. A king who had led the human tribe through the darkest times and brought them back to hope. Against such a king, how could he succeed in replacing him? Chu Kuangren did not even need to do anything. A single word from him was enough to destroy everything he had done so far. Why? You're already dead, so why did you come back? Why did you come back to stop me from leading the human tribe into a new era? The heavenly yellow Taoist master roared at Chu Kuangren like a madman. Chu Kuangren looked at him and said indifferently, "The human tribe will walk into a new era, but it will never be with these deities who once kept the human tribe in captivity and treated them like livestock. The first step to walking into a new era is to eradicate internal unstable factors, such as you." Chapter 8:13. Like you. Chu Kuangren said coldly. "You want to kill me? Song, I've made countless contributions to the human race, and now you're saying that you want to kill me? Are you worthy of being called a king?" The heavenly yellow Taoist's face turned red as he said angrily, "If everyone behaves like you, then the human race would be better off without any heroes." Chu Kuangren said coldly. No matter how many contributions the heavenly yellow Taoist had made to the human tribe, the fact that he attempted to cooperate with the deities and disregarded the dignity of the human tribe's martyrs, causing their blood and tears to be shed in vain, was enough for Chu Kuangren to kill him 1,000 times over. Sensing the murderous intent in Chu Kuangren's tone, the heavenly yellow Taoist panicked. He said to the heavenly masters and the others, "Lord God, Star Slayer, Song is the biggest obstacle to our cooperation. He must be eliminated. Without him, I'll be the king of the human race, and our cooperation will continue." Stubborn fool. Chu Kuangren's mind surged, and countless spiritual chi weapons gathered and hovered at the peak of the godly mountain. "Let's see who can stop me from killing you today." As soon as he said that, the spiritual chi weapons whizzed out. The heavenly yellow Taoist activated the heavenly golden imperial avatar to defend himself. Although he was a peak minor Taoist, it was still not enough against Chu Kuangren. His mind power alone was infinitely close to that of a great Taoist. Soon, the heavenly yellow Taoist was at a disadvantage. Under the continuous attacks of the spiritual chi weapons, the heavenly golden imperial avatar shattered again. Just when he was about to be killed, the deity made his move. Seal of time. An indifferent voice was heard. A mysterious time fluctuation appeared and enveloped the heavenly yellow Taoist, stopping the spiritual chi weapons in midair. Go. A figure came to the heavenly yellow Taoist's side and pulled him to the deity's side. Then the effects of the seal of time were lifted, and the spiritual chi weapons smashed into the godly mountain's ground, creating craters. Oh, the spatial lord. Chu Kuangren looked at the spatial lord and smirked. Just when he was about to attack again, a golden sword ray suddenly whistled towards him. It was mixed with divine power and emperor's chi. All laws returned to ruins. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and formed a whirlpool to nullify the attack. He then looked at the person who had attacked. It was the Star Slayer who was holding the golden greatsword in his hand. A playful look appeared on his face. "Yo, it's you. How many years has it been since we last met? It seems like you've improved quite a bit. I should give you a compliment." Xianxia stared at Chu Kuangren with a blazing battle intent in his eyes. "Song, I don't know how you managed to survive, but today, I can finally fight you to the death." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and slashed once more. Vajra Storm Slash. The golden sword Qi brought with it a terrifying storm that shattered the void wherever it passed as it locked onto Chu Kuangren. This strike was even more powerful than the black-yellow Pathmasters. "You're just a loser. You think too highly of yourself." Chu Kuangren chuckled. With a single thought, countless strands of cold air whistled out. Everything in the world, including space itself, was frozen. The golden storm of sword Qi was no exception. It was frozen in the air and turned into countless ice shards. 10,000 rivers are misty snow cold. The cold air spread wildly, and it was as if the entire godly mountain had turned into an ice mountain. Some of the overgods who could not evade in time were affected as well. The cold air invaded their bodies, and they felt as if their bodies were about to be frozen into ice sculptures. With a single thought, 10,000 blades create a disaster. The spiritual energy weapons whistled towards Xianxia. Along the way, there were overgods who could not block in time and were killed. Xianxia's eyes narrowed. He wielded the golden greatsword in his hand and swung it repeatedly to block the weapons. Even so, he was still forced to retreat. How powerful! So this is the power of a human king. Xianxia's gaze was extremely solemn. Then his figure flickered, and like an unfathomable gust of wind, he shuttled through the thousands of blades with ease. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived in front of Chu Kuangren. The golden greatsword in his hands slashed out. Chu Kuangren was slightly surprised. He raised his hand and formed a vortex, dispersing the power of that sword attack. However, Xianxia still held his greatsword tightly and did not budge an inch. He continued to channel divine power and Emperor's Qi into that vortex. At the same time, a ray of light shot out from Xianxia's body and instantly transformed into a figure that looked exactly the same as him. Cloning technique. That clone attacked Chu Kuangren from another direction. Interesting. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and a flaming lotus flashed. With a boom, that clone was blasted away by the flaming lotus. Meanwhile, Xianxia's figure retreated and merged back with that clone. Chu Kuangren looked at his opponent and said, "First, a movement technique, and now a clone. Looks like you've done some research on my single thought." Firmament. For so many years, I've been thinking about how to defeat you at all times. How could I not study your cultivation method? Xianxia sneered. Unfortunately, even after so much preparation, you still can't even hurt me. You're still too weak. Xianxia's expression darkened. Indeed, although he had done some research on Chu Kuangren, he still could not hurt him. If he could not hurt him, then all his research would be in vain. "Let's try this." Xianxia let out a low growl. His divine power and Qi refinement abilities erupted at the same time, resonating in the void and merging into an endless amount of energy. The entire godly mountain trembled because of this energy. Adamantine Emperor's waterfall slash. Xianxia tossed his golden greatsword into the sky. Taoist patterns flowed on the sword's body as golden sword Qi continuously swept out like a waterfall from the sky. It was extremely domineering. His strength has completely surpassed mine. The adamantine overgod looked at Xianxia and said, he was Xianxia's father, but now, the child he had with a human lady had far surpassed him. This made him feel a little conflicted. A hybrid between a human and a god had actually surpassed him, a overgod. Attack together. The adamantine overgod yelled. He raised his hand and channeled his divine power before unleashing a punch. When the other overgods saw that, they too unleashed their divine powers. Flaming dragon's luminous sun. Undid how? Icebound heavens. Wrath of earth. 5 thunders apocalypse blade. Demonic chi, demonic devour. The overgods attacked at the same time. After all, they were existences comparable to Tao Lords, and the power they unleashed at the same time was extremely terrifying. The entire sky was shrouded in colorful divine light, and the entire godly mountain was plunged into unprecedented turmoil. Golden Cauldron. The Golden Tao Lord attacked again. This time, he took out his natal Taoist weapon. It was a golden 3-legged cauldron that was engraved with mountains, rivers, birds, and beasts. As countless golden chi surged into the cauldron, the Taoist patterns on it began to flow and radiate a million rays of light as it smashed towards Chu Kuangren. The divine power attack, the suppression from the Tao Lord weapon, and all sorts of energies were unleashed, engulfing Chu Kuangren like an apocalyptic flood. In the face of such an attack, Chu Kuangren still did not panic. He gently raised his hand and channeled his ultimate Taoist Tao and mind power to their limits. Countless Taoist patterns flowed along his palm and spread in all directions. I've only used this attack against heavenly masters before. Now I'll let you all witness it. With a single thought, all shall be silent, and the heavens and earth shall perish. Chapter 8:14. With a single thought, silence descends upon the world. An indifferent voice rang out. Boundless thought power swept across the surroundings like a tidal wave. As the Taoist patterns intertwined and circulated, the entire world seemed to have fallen into an eerie silence. Everything went silent. Following that, the Taoist patterns converged and transformed into a circle of light with Chu Kuangren at the center. It then spread out in all directions. The boundless divine power was shattered. The heavenly yellow cauldron was smashed into pieces and sent flying. All the attacks dissipated under the spreading light. Some of the gods were also hit by the light wave and silently exploded into a bloody mist. A silent terror enveloped the entire godly mountain. However, when the light wave dissipated, almost half of the sovereigns present were either dead or injured. Most of the remaining sovereigns were injured and terrified. How can he be so strong? The heavenly yellow sect leader's face was extremely pale. His lifestyle weapon was close to being destroyed after that round of attack, which caused him to suffer a huge backlash. He did not have much combat strength left. He was in disbelief. At first, he thought that his years of hard work had brought him very close to the human king level, or even beyond that. However, he did not expect the gap between them to be so huge. It was the same for Xianxia. He had made it his life's goal to defeat the human king and had spent countless years studying his opponent's techniques. However, he now realized that all his efforts were futile. Chu Kuangren gradually retracted his thought power, and the world returned to normal from the eerie silence. He looked at the situation around him with a hint of satisfaction in his eyes. The power of that technique was not too bad. With a single thought, Chu Kuangren developed the profundity of his thought power cultivation. After he left, the earthen and human souls continued to focus on their thought power cultivation and created a 5th technique based on the previous 4 techniques. What was this technique? Silence descends upon the world. The power of that technique was extremely terrifying. After the earthen and human souls developed it, they had only used it against the Lord God. The power of that technique is still as terrifying as ever. Someone exclaimed in surprise. It was the Lord God. The gods looked at him with hope in their eyes. The Lord God was the only one who had not made a move in this battle. As someone who had perished together with the human king back then, he should at least be as strong as the human king, right? Lord God, we're here to lend you a hand. Xianxia said. Heh, I hope you don't drag me down. The divine lord sneered without holding back. Then he looked at Chu Kuangren and said, You've even used the silent chord, universal demise. What other trump cards do you have? Why don't you try and find out? Back then, in the Battle of Kunlun Abyss, you and I perished together. Now, on this divine mountain, I want to see if you can still do it. A terrifying divine power aura erupted from the divine master's body. The entire divine mountain shook. Somehow, there was a surge of power supporting his body. That was the power of the divine mountain. Tao merge state. At the same time, Chu Kuangren activated his heavenly Tao energy. God destroys the universe. The Divine Lord raised his hand and punched out fiercely. A massive destructive divine power swept out, shaking the universe and shattering the void. With a single thought, the myriad deities tribulation fire lotus. The golden red fire lotus suddenly appeared, its radiance illuminating all directions. Both sides attacked almost at the same time. Boom! The divine power and the fire lotus smashed into each other. The surrounding spectators were unable to withstand the impact of this powerful force and were all sent flying. This was a battle that was infinitely close to the battle prowess of a Tao master. Boom! Boom! The Divine Lord and Chu Kuangren exchanged moves back and forth. Their divine power and mind power each released a dazzling brilliance that dazzled the spectators. The master of the gods, the king of the human tribe. After more than 10 eras, the two sides exchanged moves again. The spectators felt as if they had returned to the time when they were in the immemorial Kunlun abyss. How satisfying! The Divine Lord laughed and said, "Song, in all these years, you're the first human to have killed me. You're also the first human to have earned my respect. You're also the first human to have made me view you as my lifelong enemy. Come, let's try this. Try this divine technique that I've specially prepared for you." The Divine Lord's divine power aura did not change much, but the Taoist ripples on his body had become much stronger. Countless Taoist patterns intertwined in the void. The terrifying destructive divine power combined with the Taoist patterns and formed a gigantic pitch-black sword in the void. The spectators shuddered at the sight of that gigantic sword. It was a gigantic sword that was created specifically for destruction. What an interesting technique. Looks like you haven't been sleeping on the godly mountain for more than 10 eras. Chu Kuangren chuckled. My divine power is fixed because I don't have the power of faith, but my strength isn't. For so many years, I've been invincible, but you're the one who made me thirst for strength. This is the first time I've ever wanted to defeat someone, and this technique is what I've created to defeat you. The Divine Lord said coldly. Without the power of faith, a god's divine power would be fixed. However, it was not impossible to increase their strength. The changes in their techniques would also affect the power of their divine power. However, due to the limitations of their divine power, no matter how they changed their techniques, they could not break through their limits. However, the previous Divine Lord had not reached his limits. After he was killed by the human king, he began to research his techniques. In order to unleash the full potential of his divine power, he created a new technique. Song, take this. Divine Destroyer Sword, King Slayer. The Divine Lord let out a soft cry and swung his sword. In an instant, the endless void exploded. Facing this sword, Chu Kuangren's eyes narrowed slightly. He channeled his mind power and ultimate Tao, and with a single thought, he unleashed the silent worldly demise. When the King Slayer sword collided with the light wave, a terrifying shockwave erupted. However, the light wave was at a disadvantage and was constantly shattered. For the first time, Chu Kuangren was forced to take a few steps back. Song, how does that feel? The corners of the Divine Lord's mouth curled up. He felt proud and elated. His many years of hard work had finally paid off. Not bad. Chu Kuangren patted his chest and nodded slightly. Your worldly demise is no match for this technique of mine. One more sword and you'll fall. The Divine Lord laughed and once again channeled his divine power. That gigantic pitch-black great sword formed again. The heavenly yellow sect leader, Xianxia, and the other sovereigns were delighted. As expected of the Lord of Gods. We'll win this battle. That's right. The return of the human king is just a joke. The destructive sword formed again. Seeing this, Chu Kuangren chuckled and said, I can't win with the worldly demise, but who told you that I only have the worldly demise? As soon as he said that, a surge of majestic Emperor Qi erupted and swept out in all directions. After channeling his mind power, Chu Kuangren activated the Emperor Qi in his body. Open your eyes wide and take a good look. In this life, besides my mind power, I also have this ultimate Emperor Qi. Chu Kuangren clenched his fist and channeled his majestic Emperor Qi and mind power at the same time. The ultimate Dao and ultimate arcana were activated accordingly. The fusion of the three ultimate powers, under the support of the mental power and the power of the way of the heavens, turned into an unimaginably shocking power. What? The deities were dumbfounded. Even the Divine Lord was dumbfounded. Then he swung his sword. Divine Destroyer Sword, King Slayer. Invincible Technique, Inverted Universe. Chu Kuangren unleashed a punch, and the inverted universe energy erupted. When the fist's strength landed on the black greatsword, it instantly shattered it, and a large amount of divine power was sent flying back. The Divine Lord was the first to bear the brunt of the attack, and he was instantly sent flying. Behind him, the other deities were also hit by the attack, and they too began to vomit blood. A large number of them fell to the ground. The weaker sovereigns died on the spot. Chapter 8:15. The Invincible Technique, Reversal of Heaven and Earth. The terrifying power swept out in all directions like raging waves. The entire divine mountain was shaken, and the gods were sent flying one after another. The weaker overgods were killed on the spot. A single attack had destroyed the King Slayer technique, annihilated the deities, and toppled the heavenly universe. Chu Kuangren stood where he was and slowly retracted his aura. His gaze was calm as he looked at the deities. As the human king, I shall sweep away all obstacles for the human race today. Deities, are you ready to die? How can he be so powerful? The deities had lost count of how many times they had been shocked. The combat strength that Chu Kuangren had displayed had surpassed all existences in the history of firmament. He was truly the strongest person in history. Let's attack together, the heavenly master said with a grim expression. The deities knew that there was no turning back between them and Chu Kuangren. It was a battle of life and death. Hence, the deities attacked again. Xianxia and the heavenly golden heavenly sovereigns suppressed their injuries and fought back. However, they were all exhausted, so how could they defeat Chu Kuangren? Flame Dragon Roar. The flame overgod roared and charged towards Chu Kuangren. He unleashed a punch that was accompanied by a flurry of flames. Chu Kuangren did not retreat. He took a step forward and opened his palm. A vortex appeared and devoured the flames. Too weak. A golden red lotus appeared. The mighty flame overgod was burned to ashes on the spot. Icebound realm. On the other side, the frost overgod controlled the blizzard. Chu Kuangren responded with his frost chi as well. Before the frost overgod could react, he was frozen by the frost chi and turned into an ice sculpture. Vajra Tyrant Break. Devastating thunder. The Vajra overgod charged towards Chu Kuangren. His fist was covered in golden light as an overbearing Vajra divine power gushed out. The lightning overgod followed closely behind, thrusting out a lightning spear. He chuckled as if he was looking down on Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and unleashed a punch with his physical strength. When his punch landed on the Vajra overgod's fist, the power that could destroy an entire planet instantly shattered the Vajra divine power. The Taoist patterns on the Vajra overgod's fist continued to crack, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. With a blood-curdling scream, the Vajra master god was sent flying while clutching his arm. Meanwhile, the lightning spear was already aimed at Chu Kuangren's face. However, in the next instant, a fair and slender arm disregarded the violent lightning energy and grabbed onto the lightning spear. Thunder God's expression changed as he felt an irresistible surge of energy erupting within him. His body was sent flying by Chu Kuangren uncontrollably before he crashed into the Vajra master deity. Judgment of Light. Dark Apocalypse. The Light Chief God and the Darkness Chief God activated their divine powers at the same time, causing two completely different Tao patterns to converge in the void. A black and a white light converged and rotated in a frenzy, forming a black and white light orb that contained a majestic amount of energy as it smashed towards Chu Kuangren. The Emperor's chi floated behind Chu Kuangren and transformed into 10,000 avatars. The projection opened its palm and grabbed the black and white ball of light. Darkness and light shall still submit to chaos. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. The power of the primal chaos body erupted. Surges of chaotic chi gushed out from the 10,000 avatars' palm and forcefully crushed the black and white ball of light. Following that, a chaotic chi orb condensed on the 10,000 avatars' fist. It then unleashed a punch towards the light chief god and the darkness chief god. Not good. Dodge. The two chief gods wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The chaotic chi orb smashed onto the two chief gods and exploded, turning into tens of thousands of chaotic chi orbs. Each orb of chaotic chi was as heavy as a star, and the two chief gods were killed on the spot. What a terrifying avatar. I can't believe this person can use chaotic energy. The deity's expressions changed. As Chu Kuangren unleashed his 10,000 avatars, he seemed to have a sudden urge to unleash all the Taoist physique powers he knew. With the enhancement of Chu Kuangren's Taoist Lord Realm Cultivation base, the power of light, darkness, chaos, the exquisite 9 orifices sword chi, innate ferocious energy, and so on, every single one of them was incredibly powerful. The group of deities was completely suppressed by a single avatar. The Dharma Taoist master, Luo Shuai, and the others looked at each other. They initially wanted to help. However, from the looks of it now, there was no room for them to intervene. Chu Kuangren alone was enough to completely suppress the group of deities. If they were to intervene, it would be too unnecessary. Is this the power of a human ruler? It's too powerful. The bright moon Taoist master's mouth was slightly agape as she was dumbfounded. She was a little relieved. Fortunately, she had chosen to side with the human ruler. If she had chosen to side with the black-yellow Taoist, she did not know what would have happened to her. Meanwhile, the Taoist master and the other Taoists who had once followed the black-yellow Taoist master were still traumatized by their previous actions. They were too stupid. They could not believe that they were stupid enough to stand against the king. If the king wanted to kill them, it would be a piece of cake. Compared to the past, the king's strength is even more terrifying now. In the past, the king only used his mind power. But now, the king cultivates both his mind and emperor's chi. His strength is too terrifying. I knew it. How could there be an anomaly like Chu Kuangren in this world? Turns out he's the reincarnation of the king. The Taoists discussed among themselves in awe. Space-time cage. At that moment, several white pillars of light appeared in the void. A powerful surge of space-time energy sealed off all directions and turned into a cage, trapping Chu Kuangren within. Hey, it's this divine weapon again. Chu Kuangren looked at the pillars of light around him and then at the space-time master god. In order to trap him, the space-time master god had pushed his space-time divine power to its limit. He then cast another time divine technique. Seal of time. A strange wave of energy shot towards Chu Kuangren. I've told you before that your space-time Tao is too weak. Chu Kuangren ignored the time divine technique. With a thought, circles of light waves spread out with him as the epicenter. The world fell silent. Under the impact of the light waves, the time divine technique immediately dissipated. Cracks began to appear on the pillars of light around him. You want to trap the king with this space-time cage? What a joke. As soon as he said that, with a loud explosion, the space-time cage was completely shattered. Endless energy surged out and blasted the space-time master god away, causing his divine body to collapse on the spot. However, in the next instant, time reversed. The space-time master god reappeared in his perfect form. However, he looked at Chu Kuangren with fear in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at the most inconceivable beast in the world. With such power, he's much stronger than before. No one in this world can stop him now. The space-time master god said with a trembling voice. Run. No one knew who was the one who suddenly roared. Then, the deities frantically fled in all directions. The deities were afraid. They no longer cared about faith. With the king around, they would never have the chance to develop their faith in the human tribe. So what if they could revive with the help of the godly mountain? Every time they revived, Chu Kuangren would kill them. What was the difference between that and death? Chapter 8:16. Trying to escape? Where do you think you can run to? Chu Kuangren sneered. Then, somewhere in the godly mountain, a ray of golden light shot into the sky, and a giant golden seal floated above the godly mountain's peak. It was the human ruler's seal that sealed the godly mountain in the past. The human ruler's seal sensed Chu Kuangren's aura and automatically rose into the air, hovering above the godly mountain. Millions of rays of light descended and enveloped the entire godly mountain. Suddenly, the deities within the godly mountain had nowhere to go. It's the human ruler's seal. Chu Kuangren sealed the godly mountain with the human ruler's seal. Damn it. We can't leave now. The deities' expressions darkened. The Lord of Space said loudly, "Song, I request for a truce. We, the deities, are willing to promise that we will never offend you humans again." Do you think I'm as stupid as the heavenly yellow Tao Lord? The fact that you gods tore up the 100,000-year agreement is still fresh in my mind. Your words are just **t to me. I don't even believe a single punctuation mark. Chu Kuangren said indifferently. With a lift of his arm, thousands of spiritual chi blades gathered. Song, the deities can help us conquer the outer sky civilization. Why do you have to kill them all? The heavenly yellow Tao Lord said. Oh, are you speaking up for the deities? Chu Kuangren glared at him coldly. I'm just stating the facts. The heavenly yellow Tao Lord was a little afraid. Neither you nor the deities can leave today. Chu Kuangren lifted his arm, and thousands of spiritual chi blades were about to explode. However, at that moment, a huge burst of energy erupted from the depths of the godly mountain, and a huge, colorful ball of light soared into the sky. A majestic wave of energy continuously spread from it. That's the godly mountain's origin. Only a heavenly master can activate the godly mountain's origin. What is he trying to do? Is he trying to... No way. The gods looked at the ball of light, and their expressions became one of fear and anger. It was as if someone had touched their sore spot. The crowd could not help but be curious. What was this godly mountain's origin that the deities were so concerned about? Chu Kuangren's interest was piqued. Shall AI analyze it? Analyzing. The origin of the sacred mountain, the power of the firmament star before the birth of the heavenly axiom, contains the root of the god's power. After analyzing it, Chu Kuangren came to a sudden realization. The origin of the godly mountain was the source of the deity's power. Once it was destroyed, the power of the gods would dissipate. Not only that, the reason why the overgods were able to resurrect one after another was all because of the divine mountain source. Once the source was destroyed, there was no way for them to resurrect. It was no wonder that the gods were so nervous and angry. I was still thinking about how to solve this once and for all. I didn't expect the God Lord to provide me with such a good idea. Chu Kuangren chuckled. The energy within the ball of light surged and rapidly shrank, and the gods felt their own power rapidly draining away. No, don't. God Lord, you are destroying the foundation of our gods. The gods were panicking, but there was nothing they could do. The Divine Master has lost his mind. He's willing to destroy his own foundation just to defeat Chu Kuangren. The temporal overlord chuckled bitterly. A figure gradually appeared in the five-colored light. It was the Divine Master. The Divine Master's appearance was different from before. Countless colorful Taoist patterns flowed on his body, and his radiance was dazzling. His eyes were like the stars, incomparably deep. Every move he made contained a kind of energy fluctuation that seemed like it could destroy heaven and earth. The Divine Master had gathered all of the gods' power into his body. Song, let's fight again. The Divine Master said coldly, and an unprecedented divine aura erupted from his body. He raised his arm, gathered his divine power, and unleashed a punch. Chu Kuangren also unleashed a punch. The two peerless energies collided. The godly mountain instantly exploded. Without the source of divine power, the godly mountain was no better than an ordinary mountain. If not for the human ruler's seal that sealed the space, the powerful energy fluctuation would have destroyed the nearby prefectures. This power is interesting. Chu Kuangren patted the dust off his chest. He realized that the Divine Master's power had reached the level of a great Taoist master. It made sense, since he had gathered all of the gods' power into his body. It was normal for him to be able to unleash such power. There was a hint of excitement in his eyes. Looks like I can have a good fight today. He took a step forward, and the 10,000 avatars behind him also unleashed a punch. The Divine Master retaliated as well. Under the collision of their powers, the entire godly mountain was completely shattered, and the horrifying energy impacted the Taoist pattern seal that was set up by the human ruler's seal. Boom, boom, boom. Chu Kuangren controlled his avatar to unleash one punch after another against the Divine Master. Every time he unleashed a different Taoist fluctuation, he unleashed the full power of the 10,000 avatars. Sword Qi, innate ferocious Qi, light energy, darkness energy, and chaotic energy were unleashed one after another, causing the Divine Master to be a little flustered. What's going on with this avatar? The Divine Master said angrily. The divine power within his body circulated, and it was raised to another level. Divine destruction of the universe, break. Amidst the explosion, the 10,000 avatars were destroyed. However, destroying the avatar did not hurt Chu Kuangren at all. He took a step forward and came before the Divine Master. His physical strength, mind power, and Emperor's Qi erupted at the same time, and he swung his fists in a dazzling manner. Chu Kuangren and the Divine Master fought in close combat. His fists, palms, fingers, legs, elbows, and other parts of his body seemed to have turned into the most horrifying weapons in the world that contain the most horrifying energy. As their attacks collided, the entire godly mountain space began to collapse. It was the most primitive close combat without any mystical spells. It was the most exquisite technique, and neither of them gave way to the other. Both of them entered the void. Then, they returned to the godly mountain from the void with their figures constantly changing. Everyone hid under the human mountain seal, and with its protection, they watched the battle with their mouths agape, unable to utter a single word. That battle was so exciting that they did not have the time to think about anything else, for fear of missing out on any details. I've got you. The Divine Master suddenly grabbed Chu Kuangren's wrists and sneered. A ferocious black dragon suddenly appeared on his chest. The black dragon opened its giant mouth and bit at Chu Kuangren. Idiot! Chu Kuangren sneered. Buzz! A sword chime was heard. Chu Kuangren unsheathed the long sword at his waist and stood in front of the black dragon. The dragon's head and the sword collided, and both Chu Kuangren and the Divine Master were forced back. The black dragon circled in the air with a horrifying aura. It then turned into a black halberd and landed in the Divine Master's hand. That was the divine weapon of the Divine Master, the black dragon halberd. Chu Kuangren had seen it once during the battle at Kunlun Abyss. A sword? I thought that beautiful longsword of yours was just a decoration. The Divine Master was surprised as he held the black dragon halberd in his hand. The Descendant's self-sword trembled slightly. It was as if it was unhappy that the Divine Master called it a decoration. Chu Kuangren grabbed the hilt of his Descendant's self-sword and transformed his Tao of invincibility into his sword Tao. The boundless sword Tao domineering aura tore the surrounding void apart. How many sword attacks can your black dragon halberd withstand? Arrogant. The Divine Master snorted and swung the halberd. The battle between the Divine Master and the king of the human tribe had opened a new chapter. From a bare-chested battle to a close-quarters combat, the battle's power had increased once again. Chapter 8:17. Clang, clang. A series of metallic clangs rang out in the void. What followed was a horrifying scene of the void exploding. The gorgeous white jade longsword and the ferocious black halberd clashed continuously. The Descendant self-sword and the black dragon halberd were two peerless weapons that added to the brilliance of this battle between man and God. Although the Almighty God had lived for countless years, he still could not suppress Chu Kuangren in terms of techniques and battle experience. After all, the Almighty God was born with unparalleled divine power, so he did not have many opportunities to fight with others to accumulate battle experience. However, Chu Kuangren was different. Since he started cultivating, he had fought countless battles. In the extraterritorial battlefield, he was even known as the dominator of the battlefield. His battle experience and techniques had long reached an extraordinary level. In fact, he could vaguely suppress the Almighty God. Black Dragon Halberd Technique, Soaring Dragon. The Almighty God snorted and unleashed his divine power as he swung his halberd. His divine power and Taoist patterns turned into a ferocious black dragon that soared into the sky and charged towards Chu Kuangren with an endless gust of wind. Heaven-slaying sword drawing technique. Chu Kuangren also swung his sword. The sharp sword qi seemed to be able to tear apart everything in the world. After one move, neither side was willing to back down. The Almighty God once again activated his ultimate technique and tossed his halberd into the air. Surges of divine power flowed and intertwined with the Taoist patterns, causing countless strength qi to erupt. Black Dragon Halberd Technique, Soaring Dragon. The black dragon appeared again. Its divine power was like a boundless tide, its might vast and mighty. Heaven-slaying sword drawing technique. Chu Kuangren swung his sword and slashed the dragon apart. Black Dragon Halberd Technique, Burning Dragon. With a long roar, black flames gushed out from the halberd. The black dragon swam in the sea of flames and charged towards Chu Kuangren. Heaven-slaying sword drawing technique. Another sword attack. The sea of flames dispersed, but Chu Kuangren was still standing tall. The Almighty God was speechless. Is this the only technique you know? Chu Kuangren's fingertip brushed the Descendant Self-Sword's blade. His white robes made him look like a sword deity. One sword technique can break all techniques, unlike your fancy moves. The Almighty God's mouth twitched. The next move will decide the outcome of this battle between us. God Obliteration Sword, King Slayer. The Divine Master once again used his strongest divine ability. A gigantic, pitch-black sword appeared in the void. Divine power filled with destructive aura surged in all directions, shaking the universe. Then, the deity lord threw out the black dragon halberd in his hand. It turned into a ferocious black dragon that coiled around the black god obliteration giant sword. The combination of the divine technique and the divine artifact shook the world. This attack was several times stronger than before. As the sword slashed out, the black dragon roared and sealed off the space around Chu Kuangren. There was no way for him to evade and he could only face the attack head-on. I'll show you the power of the human clan sword. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up. He leaped up and activated his Emperor Qi and Psyche power to the maximum. A wave of mysterious sword Tao rippled out. At this moment, countless swords on Firmament Star began to tremble. Supreme Emperor's sword art, unique in the universe. Chu Kuangren let out a cold roar, and a gigantic golden figure appeared behind him. That figure looked very similar to him. The difference was that the figure's face was filled with a terrifying dignified aura of supremacy and suppression. He was like an emperor. Chu Kuangren raised the Descendant Self-Sword high in the air. Behind him, that emperor's form also raised its hand. A surge of golden sword qi surged in its palm. The golden sword qi then shot out toward the god obliteration sword. This was the human clan sword, the human clan sword. The Divine Master's eyes widened. F***CK, didn't you say that you only know one sword technique? Why did you suddenly change your sword technique? Human clan's king, you're shameless. The Divine Master cursed in his heart. However, in the face of this Supreme Emperor's sword, he had no choice but to channel all his divine power to defend himself. Sword against sword, the ultimate techniques clashed. Thousands of miles of the void shattered one after another. The human ruler's seal glowed brightly in the void. In order to protect the surrounding prefectures, it trapped this incredibly powerful energy wave within the range of the godly mountain. Accompanied by the black dragon's wail, the god obliteration sword was destroyed. The Divine Master was swept away by the sword qi and was sent flying before he crashed into the enchanted boundary of the human ruler's seal. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and the light on his divine body dimmed significantly. You've lost. Chu Kuangren held the Descendant Self-Sword in his hand and looked at the Divine Master indifferently. The Taoist masters were extremely excited. They looked at Chu Kuangren's back with fanatical admiration in their eyes. This was their king. Once again, he had led them to victory against the gods. The gods, on the other hand, were devastated. They had lost. This time, they had been utterly defeated. Even the Divine Master, who had absorbed the godly mountain's origin energy, was no match for Chu Kuangren. What else could they possibly have? Impossible. Impossible. I've gathered the gods' energy into one, and my divine power is unprecedentedly strong. How can I lose? How is this possible? The Divine Master's eyes were bloodshot. He raised his hand and grabbed the black dragon halberd that had fallen not far away. I can't lose. Especially you. As the master of the gods, his dignity would not allow him to lose to a person twice. The Divine Master took a step forward and swung his halberd at Chu Kuangren. It's futile. Chu Kuangren raised his hand and swung his sword. The sword and halberd clashed again, and with a loud clang, a crack appeared on the black dragon halberd. Then, the crack spread and covered the entire halberd before it shattered into pieces. The Descendant Self-Sword shattered the black dragon halberd and landed on the Divine Master's body. It tore through his divine power and sent him flying. After that attack, the Divine Master was severely injured, and the godly mountain's origin energy that he had forcefully absorbed started to leak out from his body. Black Dragon Halberd, my Black Dragon Halberd, is broken? The Divine Master was in disbelief. Then, he noticed his injuries and the godly mountain's origin energy leaking out from his body, and a vicious look appeared in his eyes. So, even if I die, I'll drag you and everyone else down with me. His divine body began to expand, and the countless Taoist patterns on it began to disintegrate. A vast and majestic energy was about to erupt. He's going to detonate the godly mountain's origin energy. One of the gods exclaimed. The godly mountain's origin energy was extremely vast. It was the source of all the gods' energy, and the Divine Master had not fully absorbed it. Even so, it had allowed him to reach the level of a Taoist master. If this energy were to detonate in an instant, the consequences would be unimaginable. Chu Kuangren thought of the battle at the Divine Blood Mountain. That explosion had caused endless natural disasters in half of the blood source star, and billions of lives were lost. So, can your human overlord seal withstand this energy? The Divine Master said in a frenzy. The human overlord seal was indeed powerful, but it would take at least 3 more human overlord seals to withstand the godly mountain's origin energy's explosion. You won't be able to detonate it. Chu Kuangren took a step forward and activated his time stop ability. Everything fell silent. In an instant, Chu Kuangren's Descendant Self-Sword had already slashed across the Divine Master's neck and decapitated him. The Divine Master had fallen. With his death, the majestic godly mountain's origin energy slowly calmed down and was sealed back into the Divine Master's divine persona. It's over. The Dharma sect master breathed a sigh of relief. After killing the Divine Master, Chu Kuangren's figure flashed and appeared before the heavenly yellow Taoist master. His gaze was as cold as ice. My king, I was wrong. My king, I was wrong. I beg you, please give me another chance on account of my contributions to the human race. The heavenly yellow Taoist master knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Green Robe and the heavenly torturers have contributed greatly to the human race as well. Yet, you want to kill them for the sake of cooperating with the gods? Didn't the Chaos Taoist master sacrifice his life for the human race as well? Yet, for your own selfish reasons, you've watched him get sealed inside the slumbering emperor coffin for more than 10 eras. If I don't kill you, I'll only disappoint them. Boom. The kneeling heavenly yellow Taoist master suddenly charged towards Chu Kuangren and unleashed a palm attack. With a ferocious expression he said, "Song, die." However, before he could even get close to Chu Kuangren, he was stopped by a surge of mind power. Then, that mind power turned into a vortex and swallowed the heavenly yellow Taoist master whole. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Amidst his screams, the heavenly yellow Taoist master was crushed into a pile of minced meat by the mind power vortex. Chapter 8:18. After killing the heavenly yellow path master and the heavenly master, Chu Kuangren looked at the other deities who were present. Since the origin of the godly mountain had been forcefully absorbed by the heavenly master, these deities were left with very little divine power. They were no longer a threat to him. The only one left was Xianxia. Seeing that Chu Kuangren was looking at him, Xianxia could not help but shudder. Then he said unwillingly, "Song, you've been dead for more than 10 eras. Why do you still want to return?" "Because the human race still needs me," Chu Kuangren said indifferently. "If not for you, I would be the human king. I will lead them to live together with the gods and create a new era." Living together with the gods? Are you kidding me? The gods view the human race like pigs and dogs, treating them as tools. If you had really led the human race, I'm afraid that the human race would still be enslaved by the gods, living in darkness. Do you really think that man and God are irreconcilable? Xianxia said coldly. At the very least, I'm irreconcilable with these gods before me. Chu Kuangren swept his gaze across the master gods. Humans and gods coexisting. He could not deny this idea. Perhaps in other civilizations, there would be such a phenomenon. However, the gods and humans of the firmament star could never coexist. These gods had brought too much harm to the human race. The other sovereigns couldn't help but fall silent. At this moment, they couldn't help but have a thought. If they had treated the human race a little better when they were born, would things be different now? At the very least, they wouldn't have to be in such an irreconcilable situation. Unfortunately, there was no turning back. Chu Kuangren gently raised his hand. Boundless spiritual qi converged into weapons and rained down like torrential rain. None of the gods present, including Slayer Star, were spared. Even the followers of the sect of 10,000 gods were not spared. These people had all been brainwashed and were hell-bent on the gods. If they were left alone in the human race, who knew what kind of trouble they would cause? He might as well deal with them all at once. Chu Kuangren could be very forgiving at times, but when he was ruthless, he was definitely an executioner who would kill without batting an eyelid. He walked in front of the God Lord's corpse and took out a prismatic crystal. This was the God Lord's divine deity, and it contained an extremely terrifying energy. That was the power of the gods, the source of the God Mountain. After cleaning up the battlefield, Chu Kuangren left with his people. The main gods had completely gone extinct. The remaining gods that were scattered in all directions were no longer a threat. "Your Majesty, should we remove the heavenly hatred formation?" The Tao Lords were all gathered in one place. The Path Master of 10,000 Laws asked. "No need to remove it." The Tao Master of 10,000 Laws was taken aback. He then asked, "The Water Path Lord and the others have been asleep for so long. Are we going to let them continue to sleep?" He did not believe that the king was such a heartless person. "True enough." Chu Kuangren chuckled. "Who told you that the hateful parting heaven formation must be dispelled in order to release Luo Shui and the others?" He looked into the sky and said, "This hateful parting heaven formation was something that the formation master and I came up with together. However, it requires a huge amount of energy to activate it. We can't find that kind of energy in the firmament star, so the formation master came up with the idea of using the formation master as the formation core. But now we have such energy." Chu Kuangren took out a few overgod godheads and said, "If I use these godheads to replace the Taoist masters, I'll be able to maintain the hateful sky formation. All I need to do is to change the energy periodically. We don't have many overgod godheads. What should we do if we run out of them? The heavenly yellow Taoist master is right about one thing. The firmament star must continue to develop, and it's only a matter of time before we come into contact with the extraterrestrial civilization. It doesn't matter if we run out of energy. There are always replacements in the vast universe." Chu Kuangren said. The Tao Master of 10,000 Laws nodded. Chu Kuangren left the task of replacing the hateful sky formation core with the overgod godheads to the Tao Master of 10,000 Laws. In just a few days, a few more Taoists appeared on the firmament star's side. These 9 Taoists gathered with the other Taoists. I can't believe so many things have happened. A Taoist dressed in white could not help but lament after listening to the Tao Master of 10,000 Laws and the others. This person was the Sword Taoist Master, the first person in the firmament star to possess the exquisite 9 orifices sword heart. On the other hand, there were a few people by his side, and amongst them was Luo Shui's main body, a monk that wore a kasaya and held a staff in his hand, and a middle-aged man that wore armor that flowed with a faint baleful aura. By the way, where's the king? One of the Taoists asked. He was the Wind Valley Taoist, one of the strongest cultivators in the Defying God Pavilion. He was also one of the Taoists who had known Chu Kuangren for the longest time. Everyone, it's been a while. At that moment, a cheerful voice came from outside the Great Hall. Chu Kuangren slowly walked in. The Wind Valley Taoist, Fiery Martial Taoist, and the others were stunned when they saw the unfamiliar face before them. Although his face is different, his aura and Taoist aura are exactly the same as the king's. The Wind Valley Taoist murmured before he stepped forward and bowed. "Greetings, King." "King." The Taoists hurriedly bowed. Chu Kuangren swept his gaze across the crowd and smiled. "Long time no see, everyone. Thank you for your hard work after sleeping for so long. Everything is for the firmament star. Yes, we have no complaints." "Ha, compared to that, King, I heard that this is your reincarnated body, right? Your name is Chu Kuangren, right? At the end of the day, you're still different from the song of the past. If you want me to recognize you as king again, you'll have to show me your strength." A middle-aged man in black armor laughed as he looked at Chu Kuangren with an uncontrollable battle intent in his eyes. "Sky ferocious, don't be presumptuous," Luo Shui scolded. "King is a king. How can you offend your superior?" The Wind Valley Taoist could not help but glare at the Sky Ferocious Taoist. Chu Kuangren, on the other hand, waved his hand nonchalantly and smiled. "So many years have passed, but you're still the same, Sky Ferocious." The Sky Ferocious Taoist was the firmament star's first infallible tormented physique. He was a famous battle maniac among the Taoists, and it was because Tsang had beaten him into submission that the latter recognized him as king. Now, he was Tsang's reincarnated body in name. In the Sky Ferocious Taoist's eyes, he and Tsang were 2 different people. To convince the Sky Ferocious Taoist, he had to display his strength. Chu Kuangren lifted his hand and tore open a crack in the void. He smiled and said, "Let's fight in the void. I'll teach you how to be a man." The Sky Ferocious Taoist chuckled. "I couldn't ask for more." He then took a step forward and entered the void. In the void, Chu Kuangren and the Sky Ferocious Taoist were facing each other in the void. A black spear appeared in the Sky Ferocious Taoist's hand. The spear was surrounded by terrifying innate ferocious qi and Taoist patterns. "Take this, Chu Kuangren." The Sky Ferocious Taoist raised his arm and activated his Emperor's qi. He unleashed a spear attack without any probing. His first attack was at the level of a Taoist master. Chu Kuangren smirked. He did not use his mind power. Instead, he gathered a small world in his palm and grabbed the incoming spear. Then, he yanked and dragged the Sky Ferocious Taoist towards him. Chu Kuangren's knee landed directly on his opponent's stomach. Even with the protection of his armor, the Sky Ferocious Taoist could not help but let out a cry of pain. Meanwhile, Chu Kuangren followed up with a series of quick attacks. His fists, palms, knees, and elbows caught the Sky Ferocious Taoist off guard. The Sky Ferocious Taoist groaned in pain. Wind Valley, Yen Wu, and the others were dumbfounded. From what they remembered, the king had never engaged in close combat with anyone before. How did he become so powerful now? Chapter 8:19. In the void, the Sky Ferocious Taoist master, who had never expected Chu Kuangren to engage in close combat, was caught off guard. A series of swift attacks from Chu Kuangren had left him dizzy, and all he could see were the shadows of fists and palms. "Break!" The Heaven Fiend Tao Master let out a long howl and released his Heaven Fiend Dharma characteristic. The moment his Dharma idol appeared, the Sky Fiend Tao Master's strength multiplied. Surging baneful aura howled as it slammed into the void in a frenzy. Upon seeing that, Chu Kuangren unleashed his 10,000 Taoist avatar as well. From the looks of it, it was many times more powerful than the divine ferocious avatar. The Heaven Fiend Tao Master swallowed his saliva. He had a bad feeling about this. Compared to the myriad Tao Dharma aspects, his Heaven Fiend Dharma aspect was like a child. There was no comparison at all. Moreover, he could actually sense the aura of his infallible tormented body from the Dharma idol. No, not only the infallible tormented body, but also the chaos body, the all principles coalescence body, and other Tao bodies. Why did King's fighting style change so much? The Heaven Fiend Tao Master was puzzled. However, Chu Kuangren's 10,000 Taoist avatar had already pinned the divine ferocious avatar to the ground. With a few punches, it was instantly smashed into nothingness. Immediately after, the Sky Fiend Tao Master felt a terrifying force lock onto him. Then, his body was grabbed by the 10,000 Tao Dharma forms. No matter how much he conjured the Emperor Qi, he was unable to break free. Do you still want to fight? Chu Kuangren smiled playfully. Sky Fiend Tao Master hurriedly shook his head. Let's not fight anymore. It was true that he liked to battle, but that did not mean that he liked to be tortured. He finally understood that the gap between him and Chu Kuangren was too big. They were not on the same level at all. After all, he was a mid-stage little Tao Lord. To him, Chu Kuangren was at least at the peak of a minor Taoist master, and he might even be comparable to a great Taoist master. Chu Kuangren dispersed the 10,000 Taoist avatar. Heaven Fiend Tao Lord walked in front of him and knelt on one knee. Greetings, Your Majesty. I was rude just now. Please punish me, Your Majesty. He was completely convinced. The king in front of him was even more powerful than before. Get up. You've always been like this, so there's no need to punish me. Chu Kuangren chuckled. For the sake of the firmament star, Chu Kuangren had willingly turned himself into a formation core and slumbered for 12 eras. Why would Chu Kuangren be calculative over such a small matter? King, you've become even stronger. The Heaven Fiend Tao Master said sincerely. Of course, not only has the king become stronger, he has also become more charming. A female Taoist master walked over and looked at Chu Kuangren with an indescribable passion in her eyes. Her name was the Dark Moon Tao Lord. She respected Chu Kuangren as if he was a deity, and she also had feelings for him. She would confess to Chu Kuangren every few days, but she was always rejected. However, she still followed by his side and remained loyal to him. Restrain yourself, I'm about to drool. Luo Shui reminded the Dark Moon Tao Lord. If you like him, then you like him. Why do you have to restrain yourself? The Dark Moon Taoist snorted and did not take it to heart. He then walked towards Chu Kuangren and said, My king, I've been in a deep slumber for so long. Now that we finally meet again, I'd like to warm your bed. Her eyes were filled with anticipation. No need, my blanket is quite warm. Chu Kuangren said helplessly. He had lost count of how many times he had heard similar conversations in his memory. Oh! The Dark Moon Tao Lord was a little disappointed, but she soon returned to normal. After being rejected so many times, she was already used to it, and her Taoist core was now indestructible. After meeting with the Tao Lords, the next step was to deal with the internal affairs of Firmament Star and reorganize the military and civilians of the 81 strongholds. It was a very exhausting task. Even with the help of Elder Ruyan and the other Tao Lords, it still took up a lot of Chu Kuangren's time. A few months later, Chu Kuangren and the Tao Lords had come up with a general plan for Firmament Star's future development. All that was left was to carry it out. Chu Kuangren left these matters to Elder Ruyan. Speaking of which, Elder Ruyan had always been Chu Kuangren's best assistant in handling these trivial matters. She could always help him with them. Elder Ruyan, no matter what, I'm a human king now. Why don't I make you the human tribe's great chief? Chu Kuangren rubbed his chin and looked at Elder Ruyan, who was organizing some documents beside him. Elder Ruyan rolled her eyes. The Black Heaven sect alone is enough to keep me busy. What about the entire human tribe? Oh, my sect leader, my king, please spare me. This is a supreme authority. I can't believe you don't want it, Elder Rian? Chu Kuangren teased. Hee, if you want to tire me to death, just say it. I still need to rely on Elder Rian's help from now on. By the way, Elder Rian, do you have any thoughts on the future development of the human tribe? Chu Kuangren changed the topic. Elder Rian flipped through the documents in her hands and said, then I'll just say it. In the current human tribe, only the higher-ups know that you're a human king, sect leader, but the lower-level cultivators and commoners don't. Besides, the human tribe's forces are too scattered now. There are hundreds of nations, big and small, not to mention the orthodoxies formed by cultivators. There are a lot of sage orthodoxies and emperor orthodoxies. If it were in the past, it wouldn't be a problem to let them govern themselves. However, sect leader, you want to develop the extraterrestrial civilization in the future, right? Although I don't know how strong the extraterrestrial civilization is, I'm sure a civilization is 1,000 times stronger than an emperor orthodoxy. To resist foreign aggression, we must first stabilize our internal affairs. If the firmament star's forces are scattered like this, it'll be very difficult to mobilize them if we encounter any problems, let alone fight against the extraterrestrial civilization. Chu Kuangren listened quietly as his knuckles unconsciously tapped on the armrest of his chair. Then he asked, what do you intend to do, Elder Rian? The best way to centralize power is to build a nation. Chu Kuangren smiled. Elder Rian, who was the first to answer, nodded and said, that's right. Let's not talk about the demonic tribes and the like in the firmament star for now. The human forces must first be unified, and the best way to do that is to establish a unified, centralized nation. Building a nation? I miss it. Chu Kuangren looked nostalgic. He had built an empire before. He led the human tribe from the tribal era to the era of city-states, and then built the first human kingdom. However, after the war with the deities and his death, that kingdom fell apart, and the human tribe gradually became what it was today. Let's gather Luo Shui, Hun Dun, and the others for a discussion. Chu Kuangren smiled. Soon, Hun Dun, Luo Shui, and the others gathered together, and Chu Kuangren told them about Elder Rian's idea. Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard that, and they looked at Elder Rian with a fiery gaze. Elder Rian was shocked. After all, these people were the big shots of the firmament star, and any one of them could kill her 1,000 times over. Being stared at by all of them made her a little nervous. Your brother Rian, right? The Dharma Taoist master smiled. You flatter me, you flatter me. Elder Rian was a little scared. Oh my God, you're talking to me as a peer. She was not even an emperor yet, and yet she was addressing a Taoist master as a fellow Taoist. That was unbelievable. Chapter 8:20. Seeing how terrified Elder Rian was, the Dharma Taoist master tried his best to speak in a gentler tone. Brother Rian, your idea is very good. Can you tell us more about it? Is he asking me to give him some pointers? Elder Rian was a little nervous. If I don't do well, will he give me a hard time? Chu Kuangren transmitted from behind. Elder Rian, hold your head high and don't be afraid. Don't forget that your sect leader is here. Upon hearing that, Elder Rian felt a little more confident. She began to tell them her idea. At first, she was a little stumbling, but eventually, her words became smoother and smoother. All kinds of ideas emerged one after another. The Taoist master's eyes lit up as they listened. Fellow Taoist Ru Yan's idea is truly brilliant. That's right. If Brother Rian's idea can be implemented, then all the forces in Firmament Star will be united. This will be a great help to our future development of the extraterrestrial civilization. The Taoist masters said excitedly. Elder Rian looked at the Taoist masters and breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that although these Taoist masters had lived for a long time, they were not as knowledgeable as she was in this aspect. She suddenly felt a little fortunate. It seemed that she could still help the sect leader. In fact, she had been worried for the past few days because Chu Kuangren was no longer just the Black Heaven sect leader. He was now the king of the humans. With that, Chu Kuangren's focus on the Black Heaven sect would be greatly reduced. Moreover, with so many Taoist masters around him, a cultivator who was not even an emperor like her would be too insignificant. Moreover, she was not as talented as the other cultivators who had a peerless Taoist physique that could catch up to Chu Kuangren's cultivation level. In the future, she would probably drift further away from the sect leader. At that thought, she still felt a little sad. However, she no longer felt that way. There were many powerful cultivators around the sect leader, but they were always busy with cultivation, so they could not handle internal affairs as well as she could. She was still quite useful to the sect leader. Seeing the Taoist masters discussing among themselves, Elder Ruyan was a little thirsty from all the talking and wanted to find a cup of tea. Beside her, a teacup automatically floated over. It was Chu Kuangren. Elder Ruyan, thank you. Thank you, sect master. Elder Ruyan took the teacup. Elder Ruyan, I'll leave the matter of establishing a nation to you. Feel free to ask me if you need any help. Chu Kuangren smiled. Ah, you want me to handle such an important matter? Wasn't this your idea, Elder Ruyan? Of course, you have to do it. Chu Kuangren chuckled. Elder Ruyan hesitated. By the side, Luo Shui smiled faintly and said, What King said is right. We're not adept at dealing with these matters. We'll have to trouble fellow Taoist Ruyan. That's right. Since the king has said so, fellow Taoist Ruyan, go ahead and do it. If anyone dares to disagree, just tell us. I want to see who dares to stop us from establishing a nation. The most powerful Tao lords in the world spoke one after another. Elder Ruyan nodded solemnly. All right then. Just like that, Elder Ruyan, who was not even an emperor, became the most powerful person in Firmament Star, second only to Chu Kuangren. Chu Kuangren had left the task of establishing a nation to Elder Ruyan and the others. He went to the towering Heaven Palace and prepared to go into closed-door meditation. The forces of Firmament Star can be united, but for a civilization to truly stand in the vast universe, it needs absolute power. A civilization without an immortal can't last long. My main goal now is to become an immortal. Chu Kuangren murmured. He took out a prismatic crystal. It was a godhead. A heavenly master's godhead. This godhead contained an enormous amount of energy. Besides the heavenly master's own energy, there was also a portion of the godly mountain's origin energy. Ordinary cultivators could not refine this energy. However, Chu Kuangren had the universal cauldron physique, so he could. He began to refine the godhead. Time passed and soon half a year had passed. On this day, Chu Kuangren woke up from his closed-door meditation. He had completely refined the energy within the godhead, and his cultivation level had risen from the Little Tao Lord realm to the late Little Tao Lord realm. That was his cultivation level. His combat strength could not be measured by his cultivation level. Ultimate Emperor Essence, Ultimate Tao, and Ultimate Profundity. Just these three ultimate powers were enough for him to have the capital to fight those of a higher level. Not to mention he had the heavenly Tao energy, mind power, immortal techniques, immortal body, and other trump cards. He could even fight a great Tao Lord. It would not be a problem for him to defeat an ordinary great Tao Lord. I wonder how Elder Ruyan and the others are doing. Chu Kuangren's emperor's thoughts spread throughout the Black Heaven sect. He saw that Lan Yu was cultivating. Murong Xian and Nangong Huang were sparring. The godly phoenix Lil Red was secretly eating a spirit fruit in the Fairfrost Valley. Mysterious Force and the third forefather were playing chess, and they seemed to have fallen into a predicament. The seventh forefather beside them was so anxious that he wanted to say something but could not. Unknowingly, the white-robed general had found the Sky Fiend Tao Lord and was asking him about the mysteries of the infallible tormented physique. Wherever the emperor's thought passed, the scenery of the Black Heaven sect appeared in his mind. So, he found Elder Ruyan, who was with Gu Linglong, and in front of her was a map of the firmament star. Both of them were discussing the matter of establishing a nation. When they talked about the key points, they even used the sand table beside them to rehearse. They seemed to be more concerned about this matter than Chu Kuangren. Linglong was once the Royal Azure Dynasty's empress, so she must have her own experience in governing a nation. It's a good idea for her to work with Elder Ruyan on this matter, Chu Kuangren thought to himself. Then he opened the fantasy roulette. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the legendary high-grade battleship blueprint. The battleship blueprint. Chu Kuangren retrieved it and pondered. This item came at the right time. In order to develop in the universe, other than relying on strong cultivators, all kinds of advanced cultivation techniques were indispensable. Alchemy, equipment refinement, runes, formation techniques, and so on. Among them, there was one thing that was particularly important, and that was a battleship that could travel in the universe and be used in battle. The manufacturing process of a battleship was extremely complicated, and it involved various techniques such as formation and runes. The quality of a battleship often represented the development of a cultivation civilization. Chu Kuangren took a look at the battleship blueprint that he had obtained from the fantasy roulette. The formations and runes on it were far more advanced than the highest-grade battleships in Firmament Star. They were even better than the battleships of the Blood Origin planet. I'll bring this item to Scarlet Sun and the Array Master. Let them study it, Chu Kuangren thought to himself. His figure flashed and disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already on a planet in the outer domain. With his current strength, he could freely enter and exit the hateful parting formation without the help of a teleportation formation. When he found the Scarlet Sun Taoist Lord, he took out the battleship blueprint. The Scarlet Sun Taoist Lord took a look at it and instantly felt like he had obtained a priceless treasure. This is great. If we had this battleship in the past, the war against the Blood Tribe wouldn't have been so difficult. My king, where did you get this from? I got it by chance. Chu Kuangren chuckled. The Scarlet Sun Taoist Lord did not pursue the matter. Instead, he found the Array Master, an old man with a white beard, and the two of them started studying it together. Chu Kuangren did not disturb them. After giving them some simple instructions, he was not in a hurry to return to Firmament Star. Instead, he began to wander around the nearby astral ocean. My starlight immortal physique has not improved in a while. Let's find a planet to devour, Chu Kuangren thought to himself. Chapter 821. The threat of the deities had been resolved. Firmament Star was busy with the establishment of a new nation while the Scarlet Sun Taoist and Formation Taoist masters were studying the warship. Everything was progressing smoothly. Half a year passed peacefully. In that half a year, Firmament Star had changed drastically. Under Elder Ruyan's leadership, all the orthodoxies and nations knew about the human king, which caused a huge uproar. Chu Kuangren was a human king. The news shocked the entire Firmament Star. Some orthodoxies did not know what a human king was, but they knew Chu Kuangren. He was the most terrifying demon in the history of Firmament Star. Some ancient orthodoxies had heard about the human king and were shocked to learn that Chu Kuangren was a human king. After the shock, they were included in the empire's territory. They did not have the ability to say no to that. Originally, there were still some forces that wanted to resist, especially the orthodoxies with emperors. They were even more unruly. However, it was useless no matter how arrogant they were. Any Taoist master could easily defeat any emperor orthodoxy. In just half a year, all the reputable human forces in Firmament Star had surrendered and were willing to accept the empire's jurisdiction. Just as Firmament Star was undergoing a drastic reform. In outer space, a warship gradually took shape in the Sea of Stars. On the deck of the warship, the Formation Taoist Master and Scarlet Sun Taoist Master had countless light runes circulating in front of them as they tested the warship's performance. Rays of light runes condensed at the bow of the warship's cannon, and the surrounding spiritual qi frantically gathered towards it. The cannon was glowing and the light runes were circulating, the spiritual qi was being compressed. When it reached its peak, a beam of light shot out from the cannon, piercing through space and landing on an uninhabited planet in the distance. The planet was instantly penetrated, but the beam of light continued onward like a hot knife through butter. Wherever the beam of light went, the void collapsed and everything was destroyed. The planet that was penetrated also exploded, like fireworks blooming in the pitch-black starry sky, beautiful and resplendent. The energy of the beam of light was exhausted, and it gradually dissipated. However, the Formation Taoist Master and Scarlet Sun Taoist Master were still in a daze. Gulp. The Scarlet Sun Taoist Master gulped and said, "This power must have surpassed the peak of a junior Taoist. How terrifying." Even as one of the creators of this worship, the Scarlet Sun Tao Lord could not help but be shocked by the performance of this worship. It's just that this attack consumes too much energy. It's a full 1/5 of the battleship's energy. We have to use it carefully. Yes. With Firmament Star's current resources, how many more can we build? We can build 3 more. The Scarlet Sun Tao Lord licked his lips. Continue. In another place. In outer space, a large number of warships were approaching the Firmament Star. These people were the Blood Tribe. In a certain huge battleship, a man dressed in luxurious embroidered robes sat cross-legged on the deck with a long sword in front of his knees. Sword chi flowed around his body, looking extremely frightening. A few Blood Kings watched from the side with fear in their eyes. As expected of a genius from Purple Star, this aura is indeed extraordinary. It's even stronger than most Tao Masters. King Ming said solemnly. It's said that this person has cultivated for less than 1,000 years, yet his cultivation is already at the Tao Lord realm. However, such a genius isn't even in the top 10 of Violet Star. It's said that the top 10 are all Violet Star immortal seeds. The Moon Prince lamented. Purple Star was one of the 2 strongest immortal civilization in the Purple Gold Galaxy, and immortal seeds were the top sky prides cultivated by the immortal civilization. Immortal seeds, as the name suggested, were the seeds to become immortals. Every immortal seed had the potential to become immortal. Of course, it was only potential. Even if it was an immortal seed, it would still be difficult to become immortal. The Purple Star civilization had been developing for more than 10 years, and they had cultivated countless immortal seeds. However, they had yet to produce an immortal. This showed how difficult it was to become an immortal. However, this did not deny the power of immortal seeds. At least they had the potential to become immortals. Although the Blood Kings were Tao Masters, they had no chance of becoming immortals. Immortal seeds are existences that we can only dream of. King Ming looked into the depths of the warship. There was an immortal seed there. Hey, are we there yet? The young man sitting cross-legged looked at the Blood Kings and asked. We're almost there. About half a month more. King Ming replied. You guys have been fighting Firmament Star for so many years, yet you still haven't conquered it. The Blood Tribe civilization is too useless. The young man said. Brotherly, please be more courteous. King Ming took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart as he spoke. Most of the resources for this Blood Tribe expedition were provided by the Purple Star civilization. So what if I'm rude to you? But these were exchanged with the art of seizing the heavens. Then you should be glad that the Purple Star civilization is interested in your art of seizing the heavens. Otherwise, you guys won't be able to achieve anything in the next few years. The young man's tone did not change. King Ming snorted coldly and said no more. Among the Blood Tribe, only the Blood God has some ability. In order to break through to the Heavenly Tao Master level, he dared to devour the Heavenly Tao. The funny thing is that he fell into a deep sleep because of it. It's been more than 10 years, and he still hasn't woken up. The young man continued. The Blood King's expressions turned even more sour. The Blood God was their faith. The young man's words had touched their bottom line, and they could no longer hold back their anger. Li Feng were working with the Blood Tribe. Watch your attitude. An indifferent voice came from the depths of the warship. Yes, Your Highness. A hint of respect flashed across Li Feng's eyes. The Blood Kings gradually calmed down as well. I heard that the Blood Source planet was damaged to this extent because of a young sky pride from the Firmament Star. Is that right? The indifferent voice spoke again, asking the Blood King. At the mention of that, a hint of hatred flashed across King Ming's eyes. That's right. That person is called Chu Kuangren. It's because of him that King Ming then told the story about Chu Kuangren. After listening, the indifferent voice pondered for a while before saying, if I'm not wrong, this person is also an immortal seed. That's possible. King Ming nodded. That age, that cultivation level, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was an immortal seed. Tisk, even if he's an immortal seed, he's dead now. A dead immortal seed is nothing. Li Feng sneered. But you're not even an immortal seed. The Blood King sneered in his heart. In the universe, on an uninhabited planet, a ray of light arrived. Chu Kuangren's eyes lit up as he looked at the brownish-yellow planet before him. He licked his lips and said, "Shao AI, analyze it." Analyzing. A grade 4 planet contains a large amount of Taoist gold, spiritual marrow, and spiritual ores. If you devour it, Master's immortal stellar physique will reach the full success realm, the omniscient spirit Shao AI said. In the past few days, Chu Kuangren had devoured more than 10 uninhabited planets, and his immortal stellar physique had reached the limit of the full success realm. He was only one step away from the full success realm. Full success immortal stellar physique, huh? I'm looking forward to it. Chu Kuangren smiled. Then, his figure turned into a ray of light and plunged into the depths of the planet before him. Chapter 8:22. Outside Firmament Star. Tens of thousands of warships were gradually approaching. General Luo Shui Dao, who was overseeing Fort 31, was holding a jade slip in his hand. His face was so gloomy that it looked like it was about to drip water. It was a message from a scout at the front line. The Blood Tribe army was closing in. Apart from her, the other fortresses also received the news. How could this be? The Blood race was clearly dealt a heavy blow in the Battle of Blood Source Mountain. They shouldn't have been able to stop the war for several years. Why is it that a great army has arrived in just a few years? Luo Shui said in a low voice. She quickly called for a military conference. During the meeting, the various Empyreans and Dao Lords gathered. Oh, the Blood Clan is here again. I haven't really fought with them in the past. This time I have a chance. The Sword Dao Lord's eyes flashed with coldness. Amitabha, my Buddha is merciful. Although I don't want to kill too much, if you want to destroy my home, my Buddha will also be furious. The old monk in the golden-red kasaya said lightly. He was the Buddhist Taoist master. He was the founder of the Firmament Star Buddhist sect. All the Dao Lords and heavenly venerables present were born in the sky and grew up in it. They would definitely not sit idly by and watch Firmament Star fall into the ravages of war. It was the same 10 eras ago, and it would be the same 10 eras later. Did you manage to contact the king? The Dao Master of the River of Rivers asked. Not yet. The Dao Master of 10,000 Laws shook his head. The Blood race has suffered heavy losses, and there aren't many Dao Lords left. There's no need for the king to act. Just leave the Blood race to us. The Sword Dao Lord said. The other Dao Lords were in deep agreement when they heard that. In their minds, the Blood race had lost a whopping 17 Dao Lords in the Battle of Blood Source Mountain. How many more would they have left? Once everyone was done with their discussion, they began to set up defenses. We're finally here. Several million kilometers away from Firmament Star. The warships were lined up, and the vampires were ready to set out. The Wisdom King looked at the blue and white stars in the distance, his eyes burning with ambition. This time, I must conquer the Firmament Star in one fell swoop and seize the heavenly will of this world. I'll then use the resources to restore the Blood Source planet. The Blood Origin Star had suffered too much damage. They had to replenish themselves as soon as possible. Otherwise, if they were targeted by other civilizations, it would be very easy for them to be annexed by them. Are we finally here? My body is about to rust. Li Feng slowly stood up. Sword chi erupted from his body, causing the surrounding stars to tremble. Suddenly, his eyes flashed. It seems like someone has come to greet us. A group of figures suddenly appeared in the void not far away. Each of these people exuded an extremely powerful aura. Even the weakest among them had a heavenly venerate cultivation base. They were cultivators from the Firmament Star. Dao Lord Jian, Dao Lord Luo Feng, and the others were among them. They actually chose to take the initiative to attack. The far-sighted ruler's pupils dilated slightly. He noticed that there seemed to be a few new Dao Lords in Firmament Star that he had never seen before. Dao Lords were the pinnacle combat power of a civilization. There were not many Dao Lords on the Blood Origin Star. Especially after the battle on the Blood Origin Mountain, Dao Lords were extremely scarce. However, in the Firmament Star, there were suddenly a few Dao Lords whom he had never seen before. What was going on? King Ming was a little confused. Blood breed, it's not too late for you to turn around and scram. The Dao Master of Myriad Laws looked at the Blood Tribe and snorted coldly. You want us to leave? Impossible. This time, you won't be able to protect Firmament Star. Firmament Star should have belonged to the Blood breed a long time ago. King Ming said coldly. What's the point of saying so much? We're going to fight anyway. I've been asleep for so long, it's a good time to stretch my muscles. Yen Wu took a step forward and his emperor's energy erupted. Beside him, the Sky Fiend Dao Lord sneered. I was beaten up by the far-sighted ruler. Now, it's my turn to beat up others. As soon as he finished speaking, ferocious energy circulated and the divine ferocious avatar erupted. The other Dao Lords took out their Dao weapons. King Ming frowned slightly and did not waste any more time. Attack! In an instant, the Blood Breed army's warships shone brightly. Beams of energy blasted towards the Dao Lords. Chaotic heavenly splendor. As the Water Dao Master raised her hand, Emperor's energy circulated and a pitch-black longsword appeared in her hand. Waves of chaotic energy spread out with her as the center, turning into a barrier that blocked all the light beams. Chaotic heavenly splendor slash. The Water Dao Master shouted coldly. The pitch-black longsword sliced through the void and a chaotic sword ray that stretched for billions of miles descended from the sky, destroying the warships one by one. A series of sparks bloomed in the dark and silent universe. The Water Dao Master, the Firmament Star's first Empress. She was also the second Chaos body apart from the Chaos Dao Lord. Her previous reincarnation did not have a Chaos body, so she could not unleash her Dao to the fullest. Now that she was attacking, the first Empress glory was on full display. Sister Luo Shui's sword technique is still so sharp. I can't fall behind. Yen Wu laughed heartily as a halberd suddenly appeared in his hand. With a swing of the halberd, a gigantic fire dragon soared into the sky. The fire dragon shone brightly, illuminating the dark universe. One by one, the warships were engulfed and the blood breeds screamed as they turned into ashes. The strength displayed was not much weaker than the Water Dao Master. Divine ferocious avatar. The Sky Fiend Dao Lord growled. The gigantic avatar soared into the sky and threw punch after punch. Majestic innate ferocious energy flew out like meteors. Wherever it went, the void exploded and the warships were destroyed. Kill! A blood breed emperor and a heavenly venerable charged at the crowd. At this moment, a monk stood in front of them. The monk looked old and did not pose much of a threat. However, in the next instant, a terrifying aura that suppressed the heavens and earth erupted from his body. Amitabha. Dear benefactors, go to paradise. The Buddhist Dao Lord put his palms together. Then, a gigantic Buddha avatar that emanated boundless golden light appeared in the dark universe. The Buddha avatar raised its palm that was as large as the stars and struck out. The void exploded. One by one, the blood breed emperors and heavenly venerables were turned into dust. Damn it, since when did the Firmament Star have so many Dao Lords? The Wisdom Sovereign's expression was extremely ugly. Seeing the blood breed soldiers being slaughtered one after another, he could no longer sit still. The Blood Kings attacked at the same time. Good. The Sky Fiend Dao Lord laughed and activated the divine ferocious avatar. He raised his spear and fought with a Blood King. The other Dao Lords also fought with the Blood Kings. Bang, bang, bang. In the dark universe, countless Taoist patterns intertwined in the void. The battle between the Dao Lords caused violent gales of the universe to sweep across tens of thousands of kilometers, and the stars around them shook. On both sides, there were two people who had yet to make a move. One was the Sword Dao Lord. The other was Li Feng. Both of them were Dao Lords who specialized in Sword Dao. When their eyes met, Their terrifying sword Dao auras collided with each other. Sword chi circulated, and the majestic sword auras clashed against each other, neither giving way to the other. Looks like my trip to the firmament star was not a waste. To be able to meet a sword Dao cultivator like you, Li Feng said with a smile. The sword Dao Lord slowly unsheathed his divine terminus sword. He had lent this sword to Chu Kuangren before, and it was damaged during the battle at the Blood Source Mountain. However, after he woke up, he had asked the Scarlet Sun Dao Lord to rebuild it. He even added some leftover purple gold from the Descendant Self-Sword. Not only was the sword rebuilt, but its power was also enhanced. Chapter 8:23. With the Tianju sword in hand, the Sword Path Master's aura was unprecedentedly strong. An incomparable sword pressure swept out for tens of thousands of miles. Putting Chu Kuangren aside, if one were to ask an emperor who had participated in the Defiant God War on Firmament Star who were the most powerful Taoist masters on Firmament Star, they would most likely think of two people. The first was the Tao Master of Chaos. The other party's chaotic body was extremely powerful. In the battle against the gods, he could even suppress the overgods. He was one of the most important battle forces in that battle. The second person was not the Black-Yellow Path Master. Instead, it was the Sword Dao Master. As the first person in the Firmament Star to possess the exquisite 9 orifices Sword Heart Taoist physique, as well as the #1 swordsman throughout history, his combat strength was not much weaker than the Chaos Taoist Master. His cultivation level had long reached the late stage of the minor Taoist Master. Let's fight. The Sword Dao Lord looked at Li Feng and said faintly. The other party sneered. With a clanging sound, the quaint long sword in his hand flew out. There were Dao patterns circulating on the sword. Clearly, it was a top-notch Dao artifact. The figures of the two great swordsmen instantly disappeared. In the next moment, they met in the air. The two swords collided in an instant, bursting with the most dazzling sword light. Along with the sword light, there were also streaks of sharp sword chi. Sword chi swept out, tearing apart some of the warships in the surroundings. Li Feng didn't care about the vampires at all. Right now, he only wanted to defeat the Sword Dao Lord. You're not a vampire. Which civilization are you from? The Sword Dao Lord asked indifferently. Purple Star, Overlord Sword Dao Lord Li Feng. Li Feng smiled. Purple Star. The Sword Path Lord made a mental note of it. Then, the Heaven Apex sword in his hand surged with boundless sword chi, forcing the other party to fly away. The Tianju sword flashed. Sword Dao Lord slashed out with his sword. Sword Art Swift Wind. The sword light was like the wind, and it was filled with a joyful and righteous aura. Wherever the storm passed, the void was torn apart by the sword chi. 3 Ultimate Overlord Sword, Human Extermination. Li Feng raised his hand and activated the monarch chi in his body, displaying his own profound mysteries. The surrounding Dao patterns appeared and interweaved on the long sword in his hand. The sword slashed out, and the overbearing sword light seemed to be able to destroy everything. A swift sword, a domineering sword. After the two completely different sword pressures collided, the sword chi that was set off swept out like a raging wave, surging in all directions. Li Feng and the Sword Dao Lord were also pushed back. Immediately after, the two of them unleashed their profound mysteries again. Sword Art, Myriad Stars Fall. The heavenly apex sword in Sword Dao Lord's hand immediately transformed into thousands of sword lights that spread out in all directions. Each sword light was like a star. Amidst the rumbling, streaks of sword light tore through the starry sky and rapidly flew out. It was as if 10,000 stars had fallen. Li Feng growled as an even more overbearing sword pressure erupted from his body. 3 Ultimate Overlord Sword, Earth Sinking. With a slash of the sword, sword light whistled, and an incomparably heavy and overbearing aura erupted, colliding with the power of the 10,000 stars. Bang bang bang. The starry sky exploded one after another. In a certain warship, a man wearing a purple robe and a jade crown slowly opened his eyes. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes. Who would have thought that there would be such a powerful sword cultivator in the firmament star who could fight Li Feng to a standstill? Unfortunately, I'm too old, and my potential has been exhausted. If nothing unexpected happens, then I'll have no fate with the path to immortality. The man muttered to himself. It was extremely difficult to become an immortal. Even if it was an immortal seed, there was only a sliver of a chance. If it was not an immortal seed, then it was impossible to become an immortal. Besides, even an immortal seed had its limits. The older one was, the slimmer the chance of becoming an immortal. There was a saying in countless galaxies that even an immortal seed could not become an immortal within 100,000 years. In the starry sky, the battle between the firmament star's Tao Lords and the Blood Tribe's Tao Lords was getting more and more intense, especially Li Feng and Sword Tao Lord. These two top-notch sword cultivators' sword chi spread out, and no one could get close to them for tens of thousands of miles. Meanwhile, the two of them had accumulated their sword pressure to its peak. This is the last sword to decide the victor between us. Li Feng laughed. The Taoist runes spread out with him as the center, and the surrounding spiritual chi was converted into sword chi, whizzing towards him. Sword Tao Lord's eyes revealed an unprecedented seriousness. This person is young, but his sword cultivation is not any weaker than mine. I must give it my all for the next sword. Sword Tao Lord's sword chi was fully activated, and the Sword of the Heavens and Sword Chi Green Lotus Taoist physiques apparitions appeared accordingly. Sword Art, toppling the 9 heavens. Sword Tao Lord roared, and the sword chi on his body shot up into the sky, transforming into 9 giant sword shadows. The 9 swords slashed out, and each sword contained a completely different sword power. It could be a fire-based sword or an ice-based sword. The 9 swords slashed out at the same time, and its power was immense. Li Feng saw this and raised the sword in his hand. Have a taste of my strongest profundity. 3 Ultimate Overlord Sword, Killer. Li Feng roared and slashed out with his sword. The terrifying sword ray contained millions of sword chi, and each sword chi contained mysterious Taoist runes. Millions of sword chi, millions of Taoist runes, and the power was enough to destroy the world. The 2 peerless sword Taos collided at the same time, and a terrifying impact erupted, causing several small planets to explode on the spot. Li Feng and Sword Tao Lord were the first to bear the brunt of the impact. The Tao Lords stopped attacking. They watched the battle, wanting to see the result. On a small asteroid fragment, Sword Tao Lord slowly stood up. The Sky Fiend Tao Lord, Yenwu Tao Lord, and the others were overjoyed when they saw this. However, the Sword Tao Lord fell to his knees and spat out blood. The countless Taoist runes on his body were flowing, and he was showing signs of collapsing. Sword Tao Lord. Oh no! The Luo River Tao Lord and the others were shocked. Far away, on a broken asteroid, Li Feng rushed out with blood dripping from the corner of his mouth. Although he was slightly injured, his aura did not diminish at all. On the contrary, his sword pressure became even more intense. Huh, sword cultivator, your combat strength is not bad, but unfortunately, you're still no match for me. Li Feng looked at Sword Tao Lord and laughed. Not far away, Wisdom's sovereign smiled. The sudden appearance of the Tao Lord's infirmament star had put a lot of pressure on him, but he could not help but feel relieved when he saw that Li Feng had won. Although this person's words are very unpleasant, his combat strength is very convincing. It was the right choice to seek help from Purple Star. On the other hand, the Luo River Tao Lord and the others looked extremely serious. Who is this person? How could he defeat Sword Tao Lord? No, he's not from the Blood Tribe. Sir, which civilization are you from? Why did you suddenly intervene in the matter between us and the Blood Tribe? Dharma Tao Lord asked directly. Li Feng sneered. So what if I intervene? What can you do about it? It's just a small firmament star. Do you think I, Purple Star, can't afford to offend you? Purple Star. Dharma Tao Lord's pupils shrank slightly. One of the 2 strongest immortal civilization in the Purple Gold Galaxy. Dharma Tao Lord had been trying to gather all kinds of information in the universe, especially the galaxy where he was located. He had heard of Purple Star before. D** in it, why did Purple Star intervene all of a sudden? Dharma Daolord's heart sank. With Firmament Star's current level, it would be difficult to fight against the immortal civilization. The number of Dao Lords alone was 10 times that of Firmament Star. There were also great Dao Masters and even Heavenly Dao Masters. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.